Alexander Morgan sat at his favorite corner table inside Lumiere, Boston's most elite restaurant, staring at the flickering candlelight that danced across his untouched plate. The maitre d' had long since grown accustomed to seeing him dine alone, always accompanied by his ever-present tablet and a stack of looming business documents. Tonight was no different. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his light brown hair showing a touch of silver at the temples, and his piercing blue eyes fixed on a digital spreadsheet detailing quarterly projections for Horizon Technologies. Most nights, Alex found solace in these numbers. He controlled them, bent them to his will, and rarely had to face the gaping emptiness beneath his polished exterior. On his table, a half-finished glass of Sauvignon Blanc reflected the glimmer of city lights. In that brief shimmer, he glimpsed his own face, handsome and composed, yet strangely hollow. He shifted uncomfortably, dismissing the flicker of unease. He had no time for introspection. The European merger in his pipeline demanded absolute precision. At 38, he had built an empire in record time, investing heart and soul into Horizon Technologies. By any financial measure, he was a triumph, but the hush of the restaurant and the faint clink of cutlery seemed to amplify the silence that had become his constant companion. The swirling hush broke when Marcus Thornfield, his COO, stepped into the softly lit space. Marcus, tall and graying at the temples himself, spotted Alex instantly and made his way over with a quick nod to the passing staff. Rather than sitting, he stood awkwardly beside the table, clutching a folder. Alex lifted his gaze and set the tablet aside. "I thought we agreed to finalize these figures tomorrow," he said curtly, eyebrows arched. Marcus hesitated. "We did, but I needed you to see the revised projections before I commit to an investor call. Sorry to interrupt your evening." He spoke quickly, as if worried any personal talk might cause Alex to withdraw. Yet Alex only nodded, gesturing for Marcus to continue. Their interactions were always efficient: bullet points, action items, deadlines. "You've got a lot on your plate," Marcus said, clearing his throat. "But so do I, actually. Work is, well, it's good, but at home." He trailed off, clearly wanting to confide but uncertain how. Alex rarely welcomed personal subjects. Still, he forced himself to look Marcus in the eye. "Is everything all right?" He tried to sound sympathetic, but his voice came out rigid. Marcus shifted his weight. "Jennifer's threatening to leave. She says I'm never around anymore, that I put Horizon first. I'd try to argue, but I can't say she's wrong." Alex nodded, offering practical logic rather than comfort. "It's a busy season. The merger is crucial and we're scaling. Sacrifices have to be made." Marcus exhaled, glancing around the nearly empty restaurant. "Sure, but I'm starting to wonder if there's a line where sacrificing becomes permanent. You and I, we give everything to this company. Are we certain it's worth the cost?" A flicker of something stirred in Alex, an echo of old questions he'd carefully buried. He dismissed it immediately. "We're building a legacy," he insisted. "We'll have time for everything else once we secure our position globally." Marcus pursed his lips. "If you say so, I'll be in the office early to finalize these." He handed over the folder. "Take care, Alex." After Marcus left, the space felt even quieter. Alex eased back in his chair. He took a slow sip of wine, his mind drifting to the cityscape visible through the tall windows. Boston's skyscrapers glowed against the night sky. From that vantage point, everything below looked small and manageable. He set the glass down, noticing how his reflection in the wine caught the overhead lights. For a second, the sight unnerved him, an echo of something lonely looking back at him. He pushed it away. Instead, he recalled that the next day's schedule was packed. Morning calls with European partners, an afternoon board meeting, and an evening charity event. Maybe he'd slip out of the charity event early. It wasn't as though he had anyone waiting for him at home. His penthouse, high above the back bay, was immaculate, decorated in neutral tones and minimalist art. A cleaning service kept it pristine, and no one ever disturbed his orderly realm. He tapped on his tablet, scanning through his calendar, then let out a breath. Perfection, achievement, control. These were the parameters of his life. Regret, longing, or second-guessing had no space in his meticulously structured world. Yet, in the hush of this evening, a stray thought crept in. When was the last time he felt genuine warmth in someone's presence? When was the last time he sat at a table just to enjoy a simple meal with a companion? Shaking off the question, he signaled for the check. Tomorrow promised a busy schedule, and he required rest. As he waited, he couldn't help but notice the discreet stares from other diners, those who recognized him from business magazines or society pages. Alexander Morgan, the solitary billionaire. They might admire or fear him, but few dared to approach. And that was exactly how he liked it. At least, that was what he always told himself. Moments later, he stood and slipped on his coat. Pausing at the entrance, he glanced back at the flickering candles on the table he'd left behind. In their glow, the emptiness of that solitary place seemed to mirror something in himself. He ignored it as always, stepping out into the crisp Boston night. An empire of solitude was his domain, and he was content to rule it, at least for now. The next morning found Alex in the sleek, glass-walled boardroom at Horizon Technologies. High above the city, he presided over a critical strategy session about a rumored merger with a European tech giant. The subtle hum of Boston traffic far below only underscored the distance he liked to maintain from everyday concerns. Seated around the polished mahogany table were his senior executives and a few attorneys, all exchanging polite formalities before the meeting started. Alex strode in with quiet authority. His light brown hair was neatly combed back, and not a thread was out of place on his navy bespoke suit. He offered curt greetings, then signaled Sophia Chen, his executive assistant, to distribute the printed dossiers. Sophia, always precise, handed them out methodically, the rustle of paper the only sound punctuating the hush. Once the pleasantries died away, Alex launched into the agenda, outlining the potential benefits of an international expansion that would solidify Horizon Technologies as a world leader. Everything ran smoothly until a slide mention of European expansion timeline triggered a memory he'd managed to bury for years. 5 years ago, he had weighed a choice: move abroad to grow the company or stay in Boston with Catherine. Their final argument flashed across his mind like an unwelcome spotlight. Catherine, tears held back by sheer will, had offered him a future together. While he had offered her a plane ticket to join him on business trips, she'd wanted a home life, marriage, children, ordinary things that he'd dismissed as distractions. She had refused to tag along, not wanting to be an accessory to his ambitions. He had chosen the company, the promise of unstoppable growth. The ring he had once placed on her finger remained in its box. He forced himself to focus on the present, though his heartbeat quickened. He advanced the slides, speaking in a calm, measured tone about new data centers in Germany, distribution channels in France, and additional offices in London. Outwardly, he was poised, but inside, fragments of his past churned uncomfortably. That night with Catherine, her eyes stung with betrayal, kept intruding on his thoughts. When the meeting concluded, the executives applauded politely, and Alex slipped out of the boardroom to find a moment's respite. He retreated to his private office, a minimalist space dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows. The only personal touch was a single framed photo of his late father, though even that was more a nod to family legacy than a cherished memory. As he locked the office door behind him, he allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability. He paced in front of his desk, recalling the final scene with Catherine. She'd removed the engagement ring gently, placed it on the coffee table, and whispered, "If you don't know what you want, I won't force you." That was the last time he'd seen her. He opened a drawer in the sleek black filing cabinet and withdrew a small velvet box. Still locked away, the ring lay gleaming, a silent reminder of a choice that had reshaped his life. He hadn't had the heart to return it. Some distant part of him thought maybe he'd need it someday. Shaking his head, he put the box back, almost slamming the drawer shut. Regret was useless. Forward momentum was all that mattered. Later that afternoon, Marcus stopped by, holding 2 tumblers of scotch. "You look like a man with too many ghosts," he said quietly, handing one glass to Alex. They took a moment to stand by the windows, gazing out at the city's bustling skyline. Alex accepted the scotch without protest. He wasn't one to drink during work hours, but a part of him felt too off-balance to refuse. "Just thinking about the direction we're headed, the European expansion, the merger, there's a lot at stake," Marcus observed him. "I've known you a long time, Alex, and I see something's bothering you. You ever think about what else might be out there, beyond all of this?" He gestured to the view, meaning not just the city, but the life Alex had built around his career. Alex hesitated, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "I don't really get the luxury of daydreaming, Marcus." Marcus studied him sympathetically. "You've achieved more than most people do in a lifetime, but that doesn't mean you have everything." Alex's jaw tightened. The mention of a possible void unsettled him. He took a careful sip of scotch, letting the warmth fill his chest. "We all have regrets, but I can't go back. I can only move forward." They drank in silence for a moment. From the corner of his eye, Alex noticed a young couple on the street below, pushing a stroller. A strange pang fluttered in his chest, an echo of the life that might have been. He turned away from the window, breaking the spell. The scotch was empty. Marcus gave him a tight nod, then headed off to finalize some reports, leaving Alex alone with a swirl of conflicting thoughts. He slid into his executive chair, trying to refocus on next steps for the merger. That was safer territory. Yet even as he typed, he couldn't shake the flash of Catherine's face or the guilt that surged whenever he remembered she'd tried to reach him after their breakup. He had been too proud or too afraid to pick up her calls. Now, the weight of past decisions pressed down, and for the first time in years, Alexander Morgan wondered if the fortress he'd built around himself was starting to crack. Late that evening, Alex sank into the sleek leather couch in his penthouse, the glimmer of city lights behind him. He felt restless, mind churning with fragments of memory. Deciding to distract himself, he ventured into a spare room he rarely used, rummaging for an older laptop he needed to wipe before disposal. That's when he spotted the outdated cell phone, a relic from 5 years prior. Tucked away in a drawer full of obsolete devices, curiosity pricked at him. He powered it on. Half surprised, the battery still held a charge. The phone's screen lit up, revealing a barrage of old notifications. Missed calls, voicemails, and a string of messages from Catherine. The timeline was clear. They spanned the days and weeks following their breakup. He felt his stomach tighten. Her name glowed on the small screen like an accusation. His thumb hovered over the delete button, the simplest way to banish a past he'd worked hard to bury. Yet a pull of something, guilt, regret, maybe longing, made him tap the first message instead. Immediately, her voice echoed in his head. "Alex, I know you're busy, but can we please talk? It's important." He closed his eyes, pressing the phone to his forehead for a moment. The next few messages were variations of the same theme, polite requests, gentle attempts, and hints of urgency. Then the tone shifted to frustration. "I'm not asking to get back together. I just really need to tell you something." Scrolling further, he found messages with a more desperate edge. "If you don't want to speak with me for my sake, at least do it for what I have to say." Tension built in his chest. The part of him that once loved Catherine recognized the worry and fear in her words, but the prideful businessman he'd become had dismissed it all as a ploy. He'd never responded, never even listened to her voicemails. It struck him now how final his silence must have felt to her. With a trembling hand, he opened the voicemail app and pressed play on the earliest recording. All he heard was a long pause, then a quiet exhale, and finally, Catherine's soft voice. "Alex, I just hope you'll call me back. It's not about us exactly, but it's something you deserve to know." Abruptly, he stopped the playback. A chill washed over him, as if the air conditioning had suddenly kicked into overdrive. He inhaled sharply, telling himself these messages were old history. Nothing could be changed now. He nearly pressed delete, nearly erased them all for good. But he couldn't. Shutting the phone off, he set it aside, a storm of questions swirling in his mind. What had been so crucial that she'd tried so many times to reach him? What had he missed? He stared at the city's skyline from his window, lights reflecting in the glass like 1,000 unspoken regrets. He arrived at work the next day distracted, gloom shrouding his normally razor-sharp focus. During a team presentation, Sophia noticed he was off his game and asked if he needed more coffee. He forced a smile, waving off her concern. "I'm fine," he insisted, but his voice was clipped. By midday, tension spilled over. He snapped at Sophia over a minor scheduling error, then immediately regretted it. She blinked, visibly taken aback, but nodded in apology. In all their years together, Alex had never raised his voice at her. It was a glaring sign that something deeper was rattling him. He retreated to his office, shutting the door firmly. An avalanche of questions kept tumbling through his head. Had Catherine tried to trap him into an emotional conversation? Had it been about money? He remembered how determined she'd been to make it on her own, though, so that theory felt weak, and why, after all this time, did it still matter so much to him? A knock on the door jarred him. "Alex?" came Sophia's tentative voice. "The annual review meeting starts in 15 minutes. Should I ask them to wait?" He cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "No need. I'll be right there." He straightened his tie, tucked away the phone in a drawer, and forced his mind back to the pressing demands of Horizon Technologies. There were contracts to review, presentations to polish, and a staff that needed his leadership. Yet, as he entered the conference room, a subtle trembling in his hand reminded him of what lay unresolved. Between slides of climbing profits and expansions into new markets, he found his thoughts drifting to the phone in that drawer. Whatever secrets those messages contained, they'd waited 5 years to be heard. And now, he wasn't sure he was ready to handle the truth. An unseasonably warm breeze drifted across Boston's Seaport district as Alex stepped out of his chauffeured town car. He'd been asked to do a profile for Boston Business Monthly, an interview he rarely granted, but had accepted to showcase Horizon Technologies' success. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Lily Cohen, greeted him at a waterfront cafe. During their conversation, Lily expertly steered questions from corporate milestones to his personal life. She asked about the sacrifices he'd made, about the isolation that sometimes accompanied brilliance. Alex gave practiced answers, but a flicker of annoyance crossed his face when she probed deeper into his solitary reputation. "Some call you the solitary king," she said, her pen poised over a notepad. "How do you respond to that?" He paused, the label sounding colder out loud than he'd expected. "I'm focused," he replied. "Building a global enterprise is demanding. I value efficiency, both in business and in life." Days later, The feature was published. The headline read, "Alexander Morgan, the Solitary King, Visionary or Cautionary Tale." It included stunning photos of his penthouse and office, praising his drive but questioning whether he was, in fact, too detached from normal human connections. The article concluded with a rhetorical question about legacy. Would his achievements ring hollow without family or meaningful relationships? He tossed the magazine onto his desk with a frustrated huff. He despised how the piece left him feeling exposed, as if that single article had peeled away the facade he'd spent years perfecting. He'd built his empire on polished surfaces and unassailable logic. Now, cracks were showing. Soon after, he found himself at his mother's 70th birthday gathering, forced to face personal questions from relatives who saw him as more than just the man on magazine covers. The celebration took place in a historical brownstone in Beacon Hill. Dozens of extended family members mingled among crystal chandeliers and heirloom furniture. His mother, Eleanor Morgan, was a graceful woman who wore age with dignity. She pulled him aside as soon as she caught his eye. "You look tired, darling," she said, her tone a mix of concern and gentle reprimand. "I can't remember the last time you came to a family event just to enjoy yourself." Alex forced a polite laugh. "I've been busy, Mom." "The business is expanding." Yes, the business." She cut him off, though not unkindly. "I understand. But what about you, Alex? Do you ever stop to think what all this is for?" Before he could answer, a cousin interjected, praising Alex's new philanthropic fund. He tolerated the small talk, sidestepping personal inquiries whenever possible. Yet, inevitably, someone would ask if he planned to settle down or have children. He brushed it off with practiced responses. One day, perhaps. But the truth was, that day had never really been part of his plan. Late in the evening, Elena found him again, quietly guiding him to a private sitting room. "We never got a chance to finish our talk," she said gently, offering him a seat near a flickering fireplace. "I've been thinking about your father, how hard he worked, how much he achieved, but how much he missed too. I have my own regrets for encouraging it." He looked at her, seeing the wistful sadness behind her eyes. She continued, "Your father and I thought building a legacy was enough, but once he fell ill, all the meetings, deals, and accolades didn't matter anymore. All he wanted was time with you, time he'd never get back." Alex swallowed, the memory of his father's last days creeping in. "I'm not him," he said, though he felt the quiver in his voice. His mother reached out and squeezed his hand. "No, but you're following in his footsteps in more ways than you know. Just be sure you're making choices you can live with." He left soon after, the warmth of her words lingering like an uncomfortable truth. That night, as he tried to sleep, memories of Catherine flooded his dreams. He saw her laugh during simpler times, felt her disappointment when he said goodbye. Yet there was something else in those dreams, shadowy figures he couldn't quite identify, fleeting shapes that seemed connected to Catherine but remained out of reach. The next morning, a junior employee shyly thanked Alex for approving her maternity leave extension. He nodded, only half listening, until she added, "It means the world to me to have more time with my baby." The sincerity in her eyes caught him off guard, and he muttered a quick, "Of course," hastily returning to his office. That afternoon, feeling suffocated by thoughts he couldn't name, Alex booked a table at Lumiere for dinner, telling himself he needed the restaurant's refined ambiance to clear his mind. He intended to focus on the European merger, sign final contracts on his tablet, and refine tomorrow's pitch. But a strange current of anticipation rippled through him, as though someone, were waiting just beyond the edges of his carefully ordered world. Crisp linen tablecloths, the glow of soft pendant lighting, and the hum of discreet conversation enveloped Alex as he stepped into Lumiere. It was the same table as always, the one with a commanding view of the Boston skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. The maitre d' greeted him by name, leading him to his usual spot. Alex sank into the plush chair, smoothing down his suit jacket, feeling the familiar sense of detachment that came with being here. He nodded at the sommelier, who promptly brought a bottle of his preferred Pinot Noir. As the first glass was poured, Alex set his tablet on the table, the digital screen flickering with contract documents. This was his routine: high-end cuisine, subdued lighting, and hours of work. Isolation, ironically, felt easiest in a crowded upscale restaurant. Midway through reviewing a clause about intellectual property rights, a surge of restlessness hit him. He looked up, scanning the restaurant as if in search of an answer. His gaze wandered over elegantly dressed couples and parties, waiters gliding between tables like choreographed dancers. A soft piano melody played in the background. Ordinarily, none of this would faze him. He would return to his work without a second thought, but tonight his instincts buzzed with an unplaceable tension. He sipped his wine, savoring its richness, hoping to steady himself. It wasn't the merger, nor the memory of that damning magazine feature. Something else tugged at him. He tapped at his tablet, trying to refocus on the lines of text, but the words swam on the screen. That was when he heard the door open. The hush of the restaurant seemed to intensify, pulling his attention toward the entrance in a way he couldn't ignore. He glanced up, expecting just another set of wealthy patrons. Instead, his breath caught in his throat. Catherine Reynolds stood in the doorway, her long brown hair cascading in soft waves over her shoulders, dressed in a simple but elegant navy dress. She looked more radiant than in his memories, older, more poised. For a split second, he wondered if she saw him. Then his pulse thundered in his ears as he noticed 3 small figures crowded around her legs. They were boys, 3 of them, about 4 years old, identical, with the same piercing blue eyes as his. They were fussing or pulling at Catherine's hand, but all he could see were reflections of himself. The realization slammed into him. These children, they must be... The edges of his vision blurred. His grip on the wineglass went slack for a moment, and he fought to steady it before it tumbled. 5 years ago, the unread messages. Something important. The potential meaning behind Catherine's frantic attempts to contact him finally crystallized in a single heartbreaking moment. The restaurant's gentle music continued, but it felt as though time itself had paused for him. He saw Catherine's face. The slight hesitation, then a forced smile as the maitre d' greeted her party. She didn't seem to have noticed Alex yet, her focus on shepherding the energetic boys to a table across the room. A deep ache spread through Alex's chest. My children, they have to be. The math was inescapable, the timing, the features, shock, regret, and something primal he had never felt before warred within him. Sweat gathered on his brow. He watched as one of the boys tugged impatiently at Catherine's dress, and she leaned down, whispering something to calm him. The tenderness in her gesture pierced him as no boardroom confrontation ever could. Before he could rationalize, before he could gather any composure, Alex found himself standing. His legs felt unsteady, and his chair screeched against the marble floor, toppling backward with a resounding crash. Conversation in the restaurant died at once. Heads turned, eyes locked on him. Wine glasses froze mid-sip. His heart hammered so violently he could barely breathe, but he couldn't tear his gaze from the 3 little boys. His little boys. 1,000 images of missed milestones exploded in his mind, their first steps, their first words, their birthdays. A wave of emotion surged up his throat. He tried to swallow, but it was no use. Catherine spun around at the commotion, and her eyes widened as she recognized him. She looked furious, alarmed, and vulnerable all at once. Alex's breath caught. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words emerged. Suddenly he was moving, crossing the restaurant as if possessed by a force he couldn't control. The staff, the other patrons, all of it melted into the background. He reached the table where Catherine and the boys stood. Shock etched across her features, and she pulled the children closer protectively. Alex fell to his knees on the polished marble floor, tears he'd never known he could shed streaming down his face. The hush in the restaurant was absolute, a breathless witness to an unexpected reunion. In a trembling voice that barely rose above a whisper, he rasped, "Catherine, are they mine?" She stood there, tense, uncertain, her expression a mix of fury and heartbreak. The three boys stared at the stranger kneeling before them, each wearing the same curious, wide-eyed expression. In that charged moment, the perfect, polished world Alex had cultivated cracked irrevocably, and he realized with soul-deep certainty that nothing, no business deal, no ambition, would ever matter more than what he'd lost without even knowing it existed. For several agonizing seconds, the world around Alexander Morgan seemed locked in stunned silence. The maitre d' hesitated in mid-step, waiters hovered with trays of champagne, and fellow diners gawked openly. Yet Alex's eyes were fixed only on Catherine and the three small boys, who looked so much like him that it felt surreal. He remained on his knees, his heart thundering so loudly he could almost hear it echo in the hush. Catherine breathed in sharply. Her first instinct was to shield her children from this man who'd once broken her heart. She gazed down at him, anger sparking in her eyes. But there was something else, an old hurt that she'd never truly mended. The boys clung to her legs, their gazes darting between her and this tearful stranger. One of them, the most serious-looking, mirrored Alex's own habitual frown, studying him as though trying to solve a puzzle. Alex swallowed hard. "Catherine," he whispered, his voice shaking. I'm so sorry." The words sounded hollow even to him. He had no idea how to sum up 5 years of regret in a single breath, so he simply repeated, "I'm sorry." Slowly, Catherine pressed a hand to her forehead, as though to steady the whirl of thoughts in her mind. She glanced at the nearest table of onlookers, then made a split-second decision. "Stand up," she said under her breath, her voice taut. "We're making a scene." Obeying, Alex rose unsteadily. With a trembling hand, he wiped at his cheeks, suddenly aware that tears had betrayed the stoic image he'd cultivated for years. A hush still blanketed the restaurant, as if everyone waited for the next move in a gripping stage play. Catherine cleared her throat. "We should talk, but not here." She looked at the maitre d', who immediately ushered them toward a private alcove near the back. The boys, initially wide-eyed with confusion, seemed eager to follow their mother to a less intimidating spot. They walked in single file, each child's gaze flicking back to Alex with curious suspicion. He trailed behind, his limbs feeling numb, his mind racing with 1,000 questions. Are they really mine? Is this why she tried to call me so many times? The answer was obvious, but part of him still wrestled with the impossibility. Once they settled at a secluded corner table, Catherine insisted the children sit close to her. Alex took the chair opposite, hands shaking so badly he had to clasp them in his lap. He glanced from one small face to another, absorbing details like a thirsty man finding water, the identical blue eyes, the mischievous tilt of their brows, the subtle differences that set them apart. Catherine folded her arms, her gaze unwavering. "I'll do the talking right now," she said quietly. "Yes, these are your sons. I tried to tell you 5 years ago, but you never picked up the phone. I left messages, Alex. I tried everything." A sharp pain twisted in his chest. I know. I only just found those messages. I thought you just wanted—" He couldn't bring himself to say it. He'd assumed she was chasing reconciliation or perhaps money. Realizing how wrong he'd been made him feel sick. Her eyes brimmed with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. "I wanted you to know. That was it. I would never have demanded anything, but when you ignored me, I decided to go forward on my own." One of the boys, the more adventurous-looking one, tugged on Catherine's sleeve. "Mommy, can we go? I'm hungry." The tension eased slightly as she drew a small snack pack from her purse and handed it to him. Alex's heart squeezed at the gentle efficiency in her actions. She'd been doing this alone all this time while he was off growing his empire. The boys settled momentarily, munching on crackers, oblivious to the enormity of the situation. Catherine exhaled. "Their names are Nicholas, Justin, and Benjamin." "They're 4. She paused, giving Alex the chance to absorb the fact that he'd already missed birthdays, holidays, first words, first steps, an entire realm of fatherhood he'd never realized was his to claim. Tears threatened to surface again, but he swallowed them back, conscious of the children's curious stares. "They're perfect," he said softly. "Catherine, I don't know how to make this right, but I want to try." "I'll do whatever it takes," she gave a bitter half-smile. "It's not that simple. You can't just walk back into our lives and expect forgiveness. These boys—" She stopped, her voice catching. "They don't know you. As far as they're concerned, you're a stranger." He nodded, accepting the truth of it, even though it was like a knife twisting in his gut. "Tell me what to do, please, just don't shut me out before I have a chance to be there for them." She studied him, weighing his words. At last, she glanced at the boys. "We can't handle this here," she murmured. "Take a breath, Alex. And let's agree to meet tomorrow, in a calmer setting. The children need routine, and they need to feel safe." He nodded, relief and fear colliding within him. Tomorrow. It felt both too soon and painfully far away. As she guided the boys toward the exit, the restaurant's hushed patrons slowly resumed their meals, their curiosity sated for the moment. Standing there alone, Alex was struck by a wave of remorse so intense he almost couldn't breathe. Yet beneath that sorrow, a glimmer of fierce determination took root. For the first time in his life, he faced a responsibility that went beyond quarterly earnings or corporate mergers. Every ounce of him wanted to be worthy of the title father, and he knew, deep down, that he was about to discover whether he possessed the courage to fight for more than just a business empire. He would fight for the family he never knew he wanted. The morning after that life-altering encounter, Alex found himself at his office uncharacteristically early, though his mind was miles away from spreadsheets and strategy sessions. He paced his private conference room, phone in hand, waiting for Catherine to confirm their meeting time. Every so often, he'd unlock his screen to check if she'd messaged. Each second with no update ratcheted up his anxiety. When at last his phone buzzed, he read her terse text, "Coffee shop near Beacon Street, noon." That was all. No friendly greeting, no sign of the warmth they'd once shared. Still, he exhaled, grateful for a next step. Within minutes, he'd cleared his schedule, ignoring the concerned looks from Sophia and the rest of his staff. This was more important than any board meeting or investor call. At precisely noon, he stepped into a quaint coffee shop that smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries. Catherine was seated at a small table by the window, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, a half-finished latte in front of her. She glanced up, her expression unreadable. He hesitated before sitting, anxiety knotting his stomach. He noticed no children were present, and while he felt some disappointment, he understood. She'd want to see if he could handle a civil conversation before involving the boys. They stared at each other for a moment, both unsure how to navigate the emotional minefield. Finally, Catherine broke the silence, her voice cool. So, you want to be involved? What does that actually mean? Alex drew a slow breath, careful not to fumble his words. I want to meet them properly, spend time with them, help you, financially, emotionally, any way you'll allow. She snorted softly at the mention of finances. I built my own business, you know. I'm not asking for your money. I know, he said quickly. I'm not implying you need it. I just mean I'm ready to do my share as their father. She took a long sip of her latte, eyes never leaving him. For almost 5 years, I've been raising them alone. No father in the picture, no partner to help pick up the pieces when they're sick or frightened or happy. You understand how big this is, Alex? He nodded. I understand, and I regret. He trailed off, looking away briefly. I regret not answering your calls, not being there. The weight of his absence settled between them. For a moment, he thought she might get up and leave. The tension was so thick. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. The boys have a routine, school in the morning, an after-school program some days, and babysitters when I have late meetings. They're 4, which means they're curious, chatty, and sometimes impossible. I won't let you swoop in and confuse them if you're just going to vanish again. I won't vanish, he insisted, voice trembling with sincerity. She studied him again, her gaze penetrating. Alex felt exposed, like she was searching for any sign of weakness or dishonesty. Finally, Catherine pulled a small planner from her purse, flipping to a page. If you truly want to try, I'll set some guidelines. We can start with short, supervised visits. I'll be there. If the boys are comfortable, we'll increase the time. We'll talk to a counselor, maybe a child psychologist, about how to frame this. A wave of relief coursed through him. I agree to anything you suggest. She paused, then added, They haven't asked about their father much. I told them you lived far away. That was easier than explaining the truth, that you didn't even know they existed, or that I couldn't get through to you. Her words cut deeper than any corporate negotiation ever had. Catherine, he murmured, feeling tears threaten again. I'm so sorry. I was too proud, too wrapped up in myself. She gave a short nod. Acceptance, but not forgiveness. We start small. Tomorrow afternoon. A park near my house in Brookline. Wear something casual, and don't bring any fancy gifts. They're not props you can buy off. He swallowed, remembering the impulse to shower them with whatever they wanted. Got it. Casual. No gifts. He took a shaky breath. Thank you. She looked away, tears glinting in her eyes now. I'm doing this for them, not for you. They deserve a chance to know their father. He reached out a tentative hand, but she immediately withdrew. Don't, she warned, voice thick. I'm not ready for any of that. He nodded, retracting his hand. They sat there in tense silence, the sound of the espresso machine humming in the background. After a moment, she stood, collecting her purse. I'll text you the address. Be there at 2. Then she was gone, the bell over the coffee shop door jingling as she left. Alex stayed put, trying to steady the riot of emotions within him. He'd gotten what he wanted, a chance. But he was struck by the realization that this was only the first step. Years of missed responsibilities and severed trust wouldn't mend overnight. Leaving the coffee shop, he stepped onto the busy sidewalk. The city bustled around him, oblivious to the maelstrom in his heart. He understood that crossing this threshold meant embracing an entirely new life. And as the traffic roared past, he vowed that no matter how difficult it became, he would not walk away again. Because at this point, walking away would mean losing a part of himself he never knew he needed. The next day arrived with a brilliant autumn sun shining over Brookline's tree-lined streets. Alex drove himself, no chauffeur, no black SUV. He'd tried his best to dress down, opting for jeans and a sweater, though the fit was still immaculately tailored. His heart pounded a nervous rhythm as he pulled up to the neighborhood park, the towering maples just beginning to shed their fiery leaves. He spotted Catherine standing by the playground fence. She wore casual jeans and a light jacket, her brown hair loose. At her feet, 3 small boys darted around, examining leaves and giggling. The moment Alex's car door shut, he felt a wave of anxiety. In the office, he could own any conversation. Here, he was venturing onto uncharted ground. Catherine waved him over, her expression cautious. The boys looked up at the sound of footsteps. Nicholas, the serious one, fixed Alex with a guarded stare. Justin, more impulsive, clutched a leaf and glared as though challenging him to a duel. Benjamin, quieter, hovered behind his brothers, but his wide eyes never left Alex's face. "Hey," Alex said softly, trying to manage a friendly smile. He crouched down to their level, his heart lurching at the sight of 3 identical sets of blue eyes. "I'm Alex." Catherine cleared her throat. "This is Mr. Morgan, an old friend of Mommy's." She paused, almost imperceptibly, before continuing. "He's going to spend some time with us today, okay?" Justin shrugged and spun in a circle, seemingly uninterested. Nicholas frowned but nodded. Benjamin stared, unsmiling, as if trying to decipher whether Alex posed a threat. Alex glanced up at Catherine, but her face was impassive. He realized in that moment that all the money and power in the world wouldn't help him here. This was about trust, something he'd forfeited long ago. With a faint smile, Catherine led them to a nearby bench. The park was relatively quiet, just a few parents pushing toddlers on swings, a jogger passing by with a dog. She gestured for Alex to follow. "All right, boys," she said, "why don't you show Mr. Morgan the slides?" Justin perked up, hauling Alex's hand. "Come on, over here," he insisted, leading him toward a twisty slide. Nicholas went too, though his expression remained skeptical. Benjamin lingered close to Catherine before she gently nudged him along. "It's okay, sweetie. Go on." Alex let Justin drag him across the playground, his heart racing. He'd never felt so out of his element. The once intimidating negotiations he handled daily seemed trivial next to the task of navigating a child's trust. The slide looked harmless enough, until Justin demanded Alex climb up with him. "Come on, Mr. Morgan, you go first." Alex glanced down at his clothes, then at Catherine, who stood off to the side, arms crossed. With a self-conscious grin, he climbed the steps and slid down, the children shrieking with laughter behind him. He landed with a jolt, feeling silly and oddly exhilarated. For the first time in years, he wasn't controlling every outcome. Next, Nicholas examined a jungle gym shaped like a spaceship. "It's supposed to take us to Mars," he declared solemnly. Alex smiled, kneeling to examine the metal bars. "Mars, huh? That's a long flight." "You the captain?" Nicholas nodded, still cautious. "Yeah, Justin's the co-pilot. Benjamin's our engineer." Alex attempted to join their game, but his lack of practice was glaringly obvious. He found himself uncertain about when to step in and when to stand back. Meanwhile, Catherine observed, her mouth set in a tight line. He sensed her protective instincts flaring at every move he made. 30 minutes later, he was sweaty, slightly out of breath, and genuinely amazed at how time flew when he was chasing 3 energetic boys. A small crisis erupted when Justin tripped and scraped his knee, tears welling in his eyes. Catherine rushed over, but Justin reached for Alex instead, perhaps too overwhelmed to realize who was comforting him. Alex froze, then tentatively lifted the child. "It's okay," he murmured, brushing dirt from Justin's jeans. "We'll clean it up. You'll be fine." Justin sobbed into Alex's shoulder. The gesture floored him, a sudden rush of protectiveness welling up like nothing he'd ever experienced. Catherine stood watching, her face softening for a flicker of a second before she caught herself. When Justin calmed, she passed Alex a small first aid kit from her bag. He followed her directions, gently wiping the scrape and applying a bandage. Soon enough, Justin was back to running around, but Alex remained stunned. He realized that in those few moments of comforting his son, he'd felt truly alive. As the afternoon wore on, he witnessed Nicholas's meticulous nature, Benjamin's pensive curiosity, and Justin's boundless energy, and in each tiny detail, Alex saw reflections of himself and Catherine. Before long, it was time to go. The boys whined about leaving, but obeyed their mother. Gathering them up, Catherine turned to Alex, her tone measured. "They did okay with you." Her guarded expression told him she hadn't fully let her guard down. "Thank you," he replied, meaning it. "I know this isn't easy." She nodded, glancing at the children. "We'll try another visit soon. Same boundaries." Then, quietly so the boys couldn't hear, she added, "Don't make me regret this." Her warning stung, but Alex simply nodded. Watching them walk away, a swirl of new emotions and responsibilities weighed on him. He felt like he was teetering on the edge of a new life. His empire-building days had never prepared him for this kind of vulnerability, yet despite the lingering tension, he left the park with a tiny, unspoken hope. Because in that single afternoon, painful, awkward, and humbling, he had begun to understand something powerful. These children were not just an unexpected responsibility. They were a chance to rediscover a part of himself he'd locked away in the name of ambition. The gentle chime of a children's cartoon played in the background as Alex arrived at Catherine's townhouse the following week. She'd reluctantly invited him over, but only after he insisted that he wanted to see the kids in their everyday setting. The front yard was modest, with a small garden bed filled with late-blooming marigolds. Alex inhaled and knocked, a nervous edge in his posture. Catherine opened the door, one brow raised. "You're on time," she commented. "Come in." Her words were neutral, but the tension in her shoulders was clear. She stepped aside to let him in, then led him through a narrow hallway adorned with framed finger paintings, each labeled with a child's name. One had Benjamin scrawled in crayon at the bottom. A swirl of pride and sadness washed over Alex. He'd missed so many moments like this. He followed her into the living room, where the triplets were sprawled on a plush rug in front of the TV, watching an animated show about animals. Justin spotted him first, jumping up. "Hi, Mr. Morgan!" He waved excitedly, drawing the attention of his brothers. Nicholas gave a small wave, his face serious, while Benjamin peeked around a throw pillow, curious but cautious. Catherine cleared her throat, catching their attention. "Boys, remember I said Mr. Morgan was coming over? He wants to spend some time with you. You can show him your favorite toys if you want." Nicholas pulled out a bin of building blocks. "We're making a castle," he announced, "but it's not done yet." "Mind if I help?" Alex asked, trying to keep his tone casual. When Nicholas nodded grudgingly, Alex lowered himself onto the rug, folding his long legs awkwardly beneath him. Catherine perched on the couch, phone in hand, clearly ready to intervene if anything went awry. For the next half hour, Alex immersed himself in a world of block towers, plastic knights, and imaginative storytelling. Justin delighted in toppling the structures, causing Nicholas to protest. Benjamin offered whispered suggestions, a quiet observer who sometimes inserted a brilliant idea that made the fortress design more creative. Throughout, Alex asked gentle questions. "What do you like best about castles? Have you visited any in real life?" The boys answered or shrugged, each with a distinct personality shining through. At one point, Justin tugged on Alex's sleeve. "Do you have a house like a castle?" he demanded, eyes bright with curiosity. Alex managed a soft chuckle. "Not exactly. It's an apartment. Up high." He paused, aware Catherine was listening. "But I'm trying to make it more fun, a place where you might want to visit someday." Catherine's gaze flicked up, her lips parting as if she had something to say. But she remained silent, letting the moment pass. When the cartoon ended, Justin reached for the remote. "Can you turn it back on?" he asked Alex. Catherine watched closely, probably noting how her son seemed to defer to him. Alex held back a surge of unexpected pride. "Sure, just one more episode, right?" He glanced at Catherine for confirmation. She nodded. He turned on the show, feeling oddly triumphant that Justin had come to him. Once the episode started, Catherine got up to head into the kitchen. Alex followed cautiously, not wanting to overstep. She opened the fridge and pulled out a pitcher of lemonade. "Thanks for not going overboard with gifts," she said quietly. An almost imperceptible shift toward cordiality. "Some men might show up with half a toy store." He exhaled a soft laugh. "I wanted to, but I remembered your warning." He ran a hand along the back of his neck. "I'm trying to learn, Catherine. It's new territory for me." She poured 2 glasses, handing one to him. "I know it's new territory. Just don't forget that for the boys, well, they still don't know exactly who you are." A lump rose in his throat. "Yes. I realize they see me as a friend or visitor, not as their dad." She frowned, setting her glass down. "We'll need to figure out a plan for that. They'll have questions soon, if they don't already, but I don't want to overwhelm them." Her words stung, mostly because they were true. He'd missed so much. Now, the question of how to reveal his identity loomed large. He took a slow sip of lemonade, recalling the messages he'd ignored for so long. "I'll wait until you decide the timing is right," he said at last. His voice hushed. "But I'd like to be there for it, whenever that conversation happens." Catherine nodded, thoughtful. "We'll talk about it more," she said. "For now, let's focus on letting them get comfortable." They returned to the living room, where the boys had lost interest in the cartoon and begun rummaging in the toy bin again. Benjamin, shyly hugging a stuffed elephant, looked up at Alex and murmured, "Play." That single, hesitant word melted something in Alex's chest. He set his glass down and joined them, grateful just to be near his sons, even if they had no idea who he truly was. By the time he left Catherine's home that afternoon, the sun was dipping low, casting golden light through the townhouse windows. The children waved goodbye, and something profound tugged at Alex's heart. Driving away, he realized each hour spent with them felt like stepping into a different world, one where budgets and mergers didn't matter. A quiet sense of hope took root, along with the stark recognition that countless challenges still lay ahead. Over the next few weeks, Alex fell into a pattern he never imagined for himself. He balanced board meetings at Horizon Technologies with carefully arranged visits to see the triplets. He'd wake early for conference calls to Europe, then slip out in the afternoon for play dates, all under Catherine's watchful supervision. For a man accustomed to orchestrating multi-million-dollar deals, learning how to read storybooks and tie shoelaces felt like uncharted territory. A chance to meet Catherine's inner circle soon arrived, though it felt more like an ambush. One Saturday, she asked him to come by for a small gathering, noting that her sister Rebecca would be there, as well as some close friends. "They want to meet the old friend who's suddenly hanging around," Catherine had said, her tone wary. He showed up with a plate of fresh pastries from a local bakery, wanting to make a good impression. The moment Rebecca opened the door, the temperature in the townhouse seemed to drop by 10 degrees. She was a year older than Catherine, with sharp features and an even sharper glare. "So, you're back," she said flatly. "I am," Alex replied, attempting a polite smile. "It's good to see you again, Rebecca." She only shrugged, stepping aside to let him pass. "If you say so." Inside, the living room bustled with activity. Catherine greeted him quickly, then introduced him to Louise Matthews, a warm, silver-haired woman who'd been Catherine's college mentor. Louise eyed Alex curiously, though her expression remained kind. Next, Alex encountered Daniel Park, tall and quiet, who shook his hand with a polite nod. Daniel appeared calm, but Alex sensed a protective wariness behind the courteous smile. The children were scattered around, playing with building blocks in the living room corner. Alex managed a small wave. Justin grinned and waved back. Nicholas gave a solemn nod, and Benjamin peeked shyly around the tower of blocks. He wanted to kneel down and join them, but the tension in the adult circle was palpable. Louise struck up a conversation, inquiring about Alex's background and how he'd reconnected with Catherine. He gave guarded answers, mindful that Catherine's privacy was paramount. Meanwhile, Rebecca hovered, practically glaring at him. At one point, she muttered, "I can't believe you have the nerve to walk in here like everything's fine." He turned, feeling the weight of her accusation. "I'm not pretending everything's fine," he said quietly. "I just hope to make amends." Rebecca's voice rose. "How do you make amends for abandoning someone you claimed to love, for ignoring calls when she was struggling with 3 babies on her own?" A hush fell over the room. Catherine hurried to intervene, placing a calming hand on her sister's shoulder. "Rebecca," she warned, "let's not do this here." Louise cleared her throat, stepping in with a diplomatic smile. "Emotions are running high. How about we move to the table? Lunch is ready." They gathered around a wooden dining set that had clearly seen many family meals. The triplets squeezed onto a bench, giggling and demanding ketchup for their chicken nuggets. Rebecca sat stiffly, as far from Alex as possible. Daniel and Louise chatted about lighter subjects, trying to diffuse the tension. Catherine focused on the boys' plates, guiding them to use their forks properly. Yet the unease was undeniable. Alex's presence symbolized an upheaval in a life Catherine's friends had come to accept, one where he didn't exist. He recognized that each of them had played roles in supporting her, helping with the children, stepping in when fatherly help was absent. Now he was an interloper, claiming a seat at the table he had no history with. Partway through the meal, Daniel gave Alex a measured look. "Catherine's business has really taken off," he said, nodding toward her. "She's a brilliant designer, and we've built something together." Alex heard the subtle undertone, "I've been here. She doesn't need you." He nodded politely. "She is talented. I always believed in her skills," he replied. The conversation meandered, but the undercurrent remained. Even Louise, who appeared the most open-minded, watched Alex with inquisitive eyes, as though trying to figure out what kind of man he really was. Still, no one openly challenged his right to be there. He suspected that was for the children's sake. Eventually, lunch ended, and the kids ran back to play. Alex caught Benjamin's eye across the room, and Benjamin padded over. "You build with us again?" he asked softly, hugging a stuffed elephant close to his chest. Alex's heart twisted at how straightforward a child's request could be. "I'd love to," he said, standing. Before he could move, Rebecca's voice halted him. "Don't hurt them," she said, her tone steely. "If you make promises, you'd better keep them. They've gotten along fine without a father all this time." The living room fell silent again. Catherine bit her lip, looking torn, but said nothing. Alex faced Rebecca directly. "I don't plan to hurt them," he said quietly, "and I will keep my promises." She folded her arms. "We'll see With that, she turned and left, retreating into the kitchen. Shaken but determined, Alex made his way to the children's corner, kneeling to help them rebuild a toppled tower. Across the room, Catherine's eyes met his. She offered a small, hesitant nod, an unspoken acknowledgement that she understood the challenge he faced. He wasn't just trying to win over 3 young boys. He was trying to prove himself to an entire network that had protected them in his absence. Despite the rough start, he felt more resolved than ever. If he wanted a place in his sons' lives, he'd have to earn not just their trust, but the trust of the people who loved them. And that, he realized, might be the hardest battle of all. On a crisp Saturday morning, Alex pulled into the parking lot of a bustling city park, heart thudding with anticipation. This was to be his first afternoon alone, well, semi-alone, with the triplets under Catherine's supervision. Up until now, every meeting had been in her home or with her closely hovering. Today, though, she would hang back more, letting Alex attempt the hands-on parenting he'd missed for 4 years. He stepped out of his car dressed in casual slacks and sneakers, a far cry from his usual suits. He spotted Catherine's SUV already parked. She was unloading strollers, backpacks, and an assortment of snack bags. Even though the boys were 4, she still toted enough supplies to prepare for any eventuality. He hurried over to help. "Hi," he offered, taking a backpack from her. The triplets dashed ahead, Nicholas and Justin sprinting, Benjamin trailing more cautiously. "I'll be over by that bench if you need anything," Catherine said, nodding at a shaded spot near a cluster of oak trees. "Remember, watch them carefully, especially Justin. He's the runner." Alex nodded, mentally reminding himself of every detail. Each boy had different triggers, different likes and dislikes, different quirks. He'd studied them like he might study a business proposal, taking notes, asking questions. But he already knew real-life chaos didn't always match bullet points. In the playground area, a dozen children were swinging or clambering up the jungle gym. Alex guided the triplets in, scanning the environment. Justin took off first, scaling a climbing frame with surprising agility. Nicholas, wearing a focused expression, inspected a row of monkey bars as though calculating the risk. Benjamin lingered by Alex, one hand on his pant leg, surveying the crowd with watchful eyes. "Go play," Alex encouraged gently, ruffling Benjamin's hair. With a nod, Benjamin ventured to the swings, but still glanced back every so often. A few parents recognized Alex. Some stared, others whispered, likely recalling his business fame. He ignored them, determined to focus on the children. Initially, all seemed fine. Justin whooped in delight from the top of the climbing frame. Nicholas practiced crossing the monkey bars, and Benjamin found a friend to push him on the swing. But as the minutes ticked by, Alex realized the complexity of monitoring 3 energetic children simultaneously. Nicholas wanted his help on the slide, Benjamin needed a push on the swing, and Justin was nowhere to be seen. Panic jolted through Alex's chest. He scanned the playground frantically. "Catherine said watch Justin," he muttered. "Where did he go?" He circled the jungle gym, mind racing. He spotted Catherine on the bench, quickly rising as if sensing something was wrong. The other parents cast curious glances. Nicholas tugged at Alex's sleeve. "Justin ran that way," he said, pointing toward a cluster of trees past the playground fence. Alex's pulse pounded in his ears. Without a second thought, he sprinted in that direction. He caught a glimpse of a small figure disappearing behind a hedge. Vaulting over a low barrier, Alex found Justin crouched by a duck pond, tossing pebbles into the water. Relief coursed through him like a shockwave. He dropped to his knees beside Justin, chest heaving. You can't just run off like that," he gasped. "You scared me." Justin looked up, wide-eyed. "I wanted to see the ducks." His lower lip quivered at Alex's frantic tone. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morgan." Slowly, Alex exhaled, realizing how terrifying it must have been for Justin to see him so upset. He placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "I'm not mad. I was worried, that's all." He glanced around, noting the pond's lack of fencing. A child could easily fall in. His heart lurched at the thought. Catherine approached, having followed Alex's dash. She knelt next to them, relieved to see Justin safe. "Hey, buddy," she said softly, stroking Justin's cheek. "Remember what I said about staying where I can see you?" Justin nodded, eyes downcast. "I forgot." Alex realized how seamlessly Catherine handled the moment. She balanced discipline with reassurance, her tone calm yet firm. He felt clumsy in comparison, and a wave of shame crept over him. This was exactly the kind of scenario he'd never had to face, and he'd nearly failed. Nicholas and Benjamin soon arrived, accompanied by a helpful parent. Nicholas looked accusingly at Alex. "You're supposed to keep him safe." Benjamin eyed Alex with a worried expression, as if uncertain whether Alex was trustworthy enough to protect them all. Alex swallowed hard, hoisting Justin into his arms. "I promise I'll do better," he said softly. He ruffled Nicholas's hair, though the boy looked unimpressed. Back at the main playground, he regrouped, trying to hold back a swirl of self-criticism. Catherine offered the briefest of encouragement. "At least you didn't give up," she murmured. That evening, Alex returned home physically and emotionally drained, feeling like he'd run a marathon. He sank onto his penthouse couch, eyes drifting to the city lights outside. He replayed the day's events, recognizing that fatherhood demanded a level of vigilance and empathy he was only beginning to grasp. It wasn't something he could master overnight by reading a handbook. Yet there was also a small glimmer of accomplishment. Justin had instinctively apologized when he realized Alex was scared, and they'd resolved the situation together, however shaky it was. With time and patience, maybe trust could form. And as Alex drifted into a restless sleep, he clung to that single glimmer of hope, because if there was one thing he'd learned in business and now in fatherhood, it was that success was often built on learning from near disasters, pushing forward each day with renewed determination. Alexander Morgan stood outside a little bookstore in Brookline, feeling unexpectedly anxious. In his arms, he cradled a small stack of parenting manuals, some focused on raising multiples, others on healthy emotional development. The once unshakable CEO now studied these volumes as if preparing for a business acquisition. Every day since meeting his sons, he'd been trying to decode the complexities of fatherhood, devouring any resource he could get his hands on. He stepped inside, made his purchase, and quietly ducked back out, hoping no one recognized him. Later that afternoon, he arrived at Horizon Technologies with the books discreetly tucked into his briefcase. Marcus Thornfield intercepted him at the elevator. The older man wore a weary expression, deep circles under his eyes. Alex frowned, pressing the close door button. "You all right?" Marcus managed a tired smile. "I've been better. Jennifer is moving out this weekend." He swallowed, glancing away. "I'm signing the divorce papers soon." A twinge of empathy hit Alex. He remembered how Marcus had confided his wife felt neglected by his workaholic tendencies. Now it appeared those tensions had reached the breaking point. "I'm sorry," Alex said softly, unsure how else to respond. He shifted his briefcase to his other hand, wishing he had something more reassuring to offer. A year ago, he might have mumbled a quick platitude and pivoted back to business. Now he felt the urge to do more. Marcus just nodded. "Let's get through this day. We can talk after the board meeting." Inside the executive conference room, the usual bustle of corporate conversation filled the air. Charts, quarterly updates, and slides for an upcoming marketing campaign scrolled on a massive screen. The hum of professional routine comforted Alex. This was a realm he controlled. Yet halfway through the meeting, he caught himself daydreaming about a conversation with Nicholas, who'd insisted on showing Alex his new puzzle the night before. The memory made him smile without warning, prompting a few confused glances from the board members. Vernon Blackwood, a senior board member and Alex's longtime rival, cleared his throat pointedly. "Alexander, would you care to comment on the proposed timeline for the European merger?" Realizing he'd missed the last few minutes of discussion, Alex straightened. "Of course," he said crisply, quickly scanning the bullet points on the screen. He offered a measured response about resource allocation and strategic synergy, words that once rolled off his tongue naturally. Yet beneath that composed exterior, he could sense an unfamiliar tension. For the first time, business didn't feel like his sole purpose. After the meeting, he found himself alone in his office, flipping absently through the parenting books he'd just purchased. The titles felt laughably basic for a man who prided himself on intricate acquisitions and market expansions, fun activities for preschoolers, managing sibling rivalry, sleep strategies for toddlers and beyond. But he devoured them with genuine fascination, determined to close the gap created by his 4-year absence. That evening, he tested some new knowledge. Catherine had allowed him to take the boys to a local ice cream parlor, with her nearby but letting him lead the outing. Balancing 3 sets of requests, Nicholas wanted vanilla but no sprinkles. Justin demanded extra chocolate chips. Benjamin asked for something blue, proved trickier than Alex's typical negotiations. He nearly fumbled the orders, mixing up the toppings, but they all burst into giggles when he tried to fix the mix-up. An accidental swirl of chocolate ended up on Nicholas's nose, prompting the boy to laugh so hard he nearly toppled his cup. For Alex, it felt like a triumph just to see them relaxed in his presence. As they ate, Alex asked questions about school. Justin boasted of winning a game of tag. Nicholas described a craft project. Benjamin quietly mentioned a book he liked about sea creatures. Alex listened, enthralled. Over the hum of the busy ice cream shop, he sensed Catherine's watchful gaze. She seemed less guarded than before, perhaps noticing how he adapted to the children's needs rather than forcing his own expectations. When they stepped outside, a chilly breeze blew through the twilight sky. Benjamin tugged on Alex's sleeve. "Can we do this again?" The softness in his eyes tugged at Alex's heart. He nodded, voice choked with emotion. "Of course." Later, after he'd dropped them off at Catherine's townhouse, he lingered on the porch. She looked at him thoughtfully, arms crossed. "You're trying," she conceded quietly. "And I appreciate it. They do too." He swallowed, a flood of relief washing over him. "It means a lot, hearing that." She gave a hesitant smile, then said goodnight and slipped inside, leaving him alone on the porch. For a moment, he stood under the porch light, mind buzzing with the realization that his life now contained joys and stresses that transcended any balance sheet. He had 1,000 things left to learn, how to handle sickness, school recitals, tantrums, but he felt oddly hopeful, like a man stepping onto a path he was always meant to walk. Midweek found Alex in an unfamiliar role, preschool visitor. The boys' teacher had organized a casual Fathers and Friends Day, inviting dads or father figures to participate in morning activities. Catherine called to let him know, adding that Daniel had often filled in for such events. The news stirred a pang of regret. Daniel had watched the triplets grow while Alex was continents away. Nonetheless, Alex was determined to show up. Dressed in slacks and a sweater instead of his customary suit, he navigated the small chairs and bright posters of the preschool classroom with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. The air smelled of crayons and disinfectant wipes. He felt 100 pairs of tiny eyes peering at him as the teacher, Miss Harper, welcomed everyone. Nicholas, Justin, and Benjamin sat together at a low table, crayons scattered about. Their eyes lit up when they saw Alex, and a rush of warmth flooded his chest. Benjamin cautiously offered him a seat next to him, while Justin boasted to his classmates, "This is Mr. Morgan. He's our friend." The word hung in the air, a reminder that the children still weren't sure how to categorize him. The activity was simple. Draw your family. Each child scrawled a picture, labeling parents, siblings, and pets. Alex glanced around, noticing how some kids proudly detailed their mothers and fathers, baby siblings, even grandparents. When he looked at Nicholas's paper, he saw 4 stick figures labeled me, Justin, Ben, and Mommy. There was a blank space off to the side. Nicholas paused, then began sketching a 5th figure without a label. His brow furrowed as he worked, coloring the figure's clothing the same color as Alex's sweater. Alex's throat tightened. He didn't want to overstep, so he quietly asked, "May I see?" Nicholas nodded but didn't say much, as though unsure how to explain. Justin's paper showed all 3 brothers, a giant dog, which he didn't actually have, and Catherine. Benjamin, the most detail-oriented, drew the entire house, complete with a tree out front. Off to the side stood a taller figure with silver streaks in his hair. He wrote a large question mark above it. Watching them struggle to depict him in their family drawings underscored the weight of his absence. He'd spent so long out of the picture, literally and figuratively, that they didn't know how to insert him into their stories. He tried to hold back the swell of guilt. He reminded himself that he was here now, attempting to fill that empty space with something real. At snack time, he helped pass out juice boxes and listened to the boys chatter about their classmates. He felt a sting whenever Daniel's name came up in their anecdotes. Apparently, Daniel had visited before, bringing homemade cookies or playing guitar. Alex felt no ill will toward Daniel. In fact, he was grateful someone had been there. Yet the pang of jealousy persisted. Miss Harper announced that the children would perform a short song. The kids lined up, launching into a cheerful tune about friendship and family. Their voices were shrill but endearing, the lyrics silly and full of hand motions. Alex scanned the line, finding Nicholas fidgeting with his shirt hem, Justin waving to get his attention, and Benjamin methodically following each gesture. For a moment, Alex felt something like heartbreak, seeing how he'd missed their earliest recitals and mini-performances. But he also felt a surge of gratitude to be present for this one, however small. After the performance, the teacher encouraged the adults to share a story or memory about the children. Alex froze. Other dads spoke about the day their child was born, or a favorite vacation together. Alex had no such memories to draw from. A lump formed in his throat. Finally, he cleared his throat and said softly, "I actually only recently got to know Nicholas, Justin, and Benjamin, but every day has been an adventure. My favorite memory so far is taking them all to the park, seeing them run around, laugh, and just be who they are. It was brief and awkward, but the boys seemed satisfied. Catherine, standing at the edge of the classroom, gave him a small nod of approval. When the event ended, kids scattered to their cubbies. Alex knelt down, helping the boys zip their backpacks. He noticed that Nicholas snuck a glance his way, expression somber. "Can you come next time too?" Alex's heart ached. "Of course I will," he promised, gentling his tone. "Anytime you want me there, I'll do my best to show up." As he walked to his car afterward, he couldn't shake the bittersweet combination of pride and regret. He was getting glimpses of all he'd missed, birthdays, milestones, those intangible everyday moments that formed their childhood. The best he could do now was to keep moving forward, weaving himself into the tapestry of their lives, thread by thread. Still, the weight of his absence pressed on him like a constant reminder that once lost, time could never be regained. Late one evening, Alex paced his penthouse, phone pressed to his ear. On the line, a lawyer in London rattled off updates about the European merger, citing complex negotiation points that required Alex's immediate input. Ordinarily, he would have found such details invigorating. He thrived on dissecting contracts. But tonight, his mind was only half on the deal. He was thinking about the triplets, about how each day's progress could be undone if he vanished for weeks to Europe. When the call ended, he sank onto a sleek leather sofa, uncharacteristically weary. The next morning, he would face his board of directors, who expected him to finalize travel plans for in-person negotiations. Vernon Blackwood had made no secret of his doubts about Alex's personal distractions. Shareholders were questioning Horizon Technologies' leadership, their whispers amplified by certain analysts who labeled Alex's newfound fatherhood as a destabilizing factor. Desperate for clarity, Alex tapped out a text message to Marcus asking if they could talk. Minutes later, Marcus invited him to the office after hours. By the time Alex arrived, most employees had gone home, leaving the corridors quiet. He found Marcus in his glass-walled corner office, hunched over a stack of files. Boxes half-filled with personal items lined the walls, a consequence of Marcus's pending divorce and potential relocation. He stood up when Alex entered, offering a tired smile. "I assume this is about London," Marcus said, gesturing for Alex to sit. Alex nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I'm supposed to be there for 3 weeks. Vernon thinks I should go immediately if I'm serious about sealing the deal. But," he trailed off, unsure how to explain the tug he felt. Leaving the boys for nearly a month felt impossible, especially when trust was still fragile. Marcus studied him. "A year ago, you wouldn't have hesitated. Now you look like a man trying to juggle 2 worlds. Alex nodded, then blurted out, "I need you to go in my place." It was a bold request. Marcus blinked, clearly surprised. "Me? Alex, I know the deal inside and out, but the Europeans expect you. You're the face of Horizon. I'm just the COO. Not just," Alex corrected. "You've run this company with me for years. You're more than qualified. We can do video calls. I'll step in remotely for critical negotiations. But you'd be on the ground, leading. I trust you." Marcus sank back in his chair, a swirl of emotions playing across his face. Shock, pride, fear. "I'll do it," he said finally, voice hushed. "But there will be pushback, and not just from Vernon. Some shareholders might see this as you neglecting your responsibilities." Alex exhaled. "I know, but the alternative is me jetting off and missing weeks of the boys' lives. I won't do that right now." A faint smile tugged at Marcus's lips. "Fatherhood changed you, Alex. For the better, I think." Alex felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. "Let them gossip," he said, sounding braver than he felt. "I'm still CEO. If we close the deal successfully, my decision will be vindicated." Marcus clasped Alex's shoulder. "All right, we'll make it happen. But you owe me maybe a quiet dinner where we don't talk about work." The brief mention of personal time reminded Alex that Marcus was navigating his own crisis. Alex vowed to be there for him, the way Marcus had been for years. The next day, Alex announced to the board that Marcus would oversee the London negotiations. Vernon launched a tirade, accusing Alex of being derelict in his duties. In a controlled tone, Alex reminded everyone that Marcus was second in command for a reason, and that technology would allow Alex to join critical meetings by video. He watched the board members exchange uneasy glances. Still, he refused to budge. The company either had faith in his leadership choices or it didn't. By evening, news of Alex's decision leaked to a business blog, which labeled him the Billionaire Dad. The post questioned if he was going soft, sacrificing shareholder profit for personal obligations. Alex read it, lips tightening in frustration, then closed his laptop. He could handle criticism. He'd faced it before. But for once, he had a reason that outshone all the headlines and market pundits. 3 little boys who needed their father's steady presence. That night, he sat in the penthouse nursery he'd recently renovated. The decor was simpler than one might expect for a billionaire. No gold-plated cribs or designer wallpaper, just cozy beds, bright colors, and shelves stuffed with children's books. The knowledge that the boys wouldn't be sleeping there tonight didn't diminish its significance. He found himself imagining the future, imagining bedtime stories and laughter echoing through halls that had once been eerily silent. Despite the mounting corporate pressure, Alex felt certain he'd made the right call. Tomorrow, he'd make sure to drop by Catherine's place, just to say hello to the kids. Perhaps they could read a bedtime story over video chat if it was too late to visit in person. One thing was clear: he was done missing milestones for the sake of stock prices. If that meant risking a corporate crossroads, so be it. He'd face the consequences, because for the first time in his life, he was putting family before everything else. Marcus's departure for London came swiftly. Alex stood at Logan Airport's private terminal, watching his friend board a sleek corporate jet. They exchanged a final handshake, Marcus promising to keep him updated at every stage of negotiation. When the plane lifted into the grey Boston sky, Alex felt a swirl of both relief and apprehension. This is it, he thought. There's no turning back now. Back at the office, the atmosphere was tense. Vernon Blackwood wasted no time making snide remarks about Alex's absence from the international scene. A few board members echoed concerns that the deal would fall through without Alex's personal touch. Determined to prove otherwise, Alex set up a mini war room with a live video feed to Marcus, scheduling calls at odd hours to accommodate the time difference. Yet whenever possible, Alex dashed out of the office early enough to see the triplets. Catherine maintained her cautious stance, but the boys now seemed excited whenever he arrived. One evening, he showed up at their townhouse just before dinner time. Catherine let him in, weariness shadowing her eyes. "They're in the living room," she said, gesturing down the hall. "You can stay for dinner if you want." The invitation surprised him. "I'd love to," he replied, carefully hiding how much it meant. He found the boys sprawled out with coloring books, comparing crayons and giggling. "Hey, guys," he said, kneeling. "What you drawing?" Justin grinned. "We're making pictures of space stuff." He pointed at a jumble of stars and rockets he'd scribbled across the page. Benjamin quietly showed Alex his carefully colored planets, each labeled with wobbly letters. Nicholas sat with a thoughtful expression, as though deciding whether to let Alex see his paper. After a moment, he turned it around, revealing a rudimentary figure in a spacesuit. "This one's you," Nicholas said, cheeks flushing. "I drew you on Mars." Alex's heart twisted. "Me on Mars, huh? Very cool." He ruffled Nicholas's hair, feeling a surge of gratitude that his son wanted him in the picture, any picture. Dinner was a simple affair, pasta with red sauce and a bowl of steamed vegetables. Catherine poured apple juice for the boys, who complained about the green beans until Alex joked that green beans gave astronauts the energy to jump higher on Mars. They laughed, taking reluctant bites. The tension between Alex and Catherine lingered, but a fragile sense of normalcy wove itself through the meal. He joked about nearly ruining one of his suits when he tried to paint a bedroom wall. The boys giggled, picturing the ever-formal Alex splattered with paint. After dinner, they drifted to the living room. The boys clamored for a bedtime story, and surprisingly, Catherine gave Alex the honor. He settled onto the couch, a child on each side. Benjamin perched on his lap with that ever-watchful gaze. The book was a tattered hardcover about a little boy who wanted to fly. Alex read slowly, allowing each child to interrupt with questions and excited tangents. By the time he closed the book, he realized Catherine was standing by the doorway, arms folded, a small smile tugging at her lips. When the boys trudged upstairs to brush their teeth, Catherine walked over. "Thank you," she said, "for, well, helping out. They love having you here." He smiled. "I love being here." His voice was soft, carrying weight beyond the casual tone. "And thanks for letting me." She glanced away. "They deserve a father. Even if it took 4 years for you to come around." The word stung, but he nodded. "I accept that, and I know I have to earn your trust." Before she could respond, the sound of a little scuffle broke out upstairs, Justin and Nicholas arguing over which toothbrush belonged to whom. Catherine sighed. "Excuse me." She left Alex alone in the living room. He wandered around, noticing photos on shelves, the boys at various ages, from newborns to toddlerhood. In each snapshot, Catherine smiled or tried to keep multiple squirming babies in view. He traced a finger across the edge of a frame, imagining the nights she'd spent awake, juggling feedings, comforting 3 crying infants. It dawned on him how monstrous his absence must have felt during those moments. A lump rose in his throat, and he took a steadying breath. Moments later, Catherine came back down, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "All quiet now," she murmured. She hesitated, then offered a tentative suggestion. "I have a major design expo in Chicago next month. I've been debating whether or not to go. If I do, I'd be gone almost a week. Rebecca can help. But if you're serious about wanting to be in their lives, maybe you could help too." A jolt of excitement shot through Alex. She was asking him, trusting him to keep the kids for an extended stretch. "Of course," he said quickly. "Anything you need?" She nodded, still guarded, but the fact she was even considering leaving the boys with him for days spoke volumes. Outside, dusk settled over the quiet Brookline street. Alex glanced at his phone, noticing a flurry of messages from Marcus. He had to address them soon. Business never stopped, but for a few more minutes he lingered there, savoring the small victory. Because in this distant reconnection, across oceans of missed time, he was finally taking steps toward becoming the father the boys deserved. And with Catherine asking for his help, it felt like a first glimpse of a bridge mending the chasm that had divided them for so long. A week passed in a steady, if fragile, rhythm. Alex juggled business calls with reading bedtime stories. He fielded worried texts from Marcus in London, who reported that Guillaume Renault, the European CEO, was pushing for more favorable terms than initially agreed upon. Alex coached Marcus from afar, occasionally stepping into video conferences to reinforce certain points. Despite bumps in the road, the negotiations persisted. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, everything changed. Catherine's panicked voice tore through Alex's phone while he was in the middle of finalizing next quarter's projections. "It's Benjamin," she gasped. "He's burning up with fever. I'm taking him to the hospital. I can't get hold of Rebecca, and the other 2 are asleep. I need, please, just come." Alex didn't hesitate. He left Horizon's offices in such a rush that Sophia had to chase after him with his car keys. Within minutes, he was navigating rain-slicked streets, heart pounding like a drum. At the hospital, he found Catherine cradling a lethargic Benjamin in her arms. Nurses bustled, hooking him up to monitors. Alex swallowed hard at the sight of his little boy's flushed cheeks and glassy eyes. "Did the doctor say what's wrong?" he asked, voice shaking. Catherine brushed damp hair from Benjamin's forehead. "They suspect pneumonia," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "They're running tests." She looked exhausted, still wearing the day's work clothes. Alex gently touched her shoulder. "I'll handle whatever's needed. Let me talk to the nurses." An hour later, a pediatric specialist confirmed the diagnosis: pneumonia, likely treatable with IV antibiotics and a short hospital stay. Relief warred with fear inside Alex. At least they knew what it was, but seeing his son hooked up to machines felt like a nightmare. Catherine sank into a chair in the small hospital room, tension etched across her face. "Why don't you try to rest?" Alex offered quietly. "I'll stay with him." But she shook her head, unwilling to leave her child's side. Alex pulled up another chair, resigning himself to a vigil alongside her. The hallway lights cast harsh shadows on the walls, and the monitor's rhythmic beep threatened to unravel his nerves. Benjamin dozed fitfully, roused now and then by coughs that racked his small body. Each time he stirred, Alex leaned close, murmuring reassurances. Once, when Benjamin's eyes fluttered open, he gazed at Alex with fever-glazed confusion. "Dad," he croaked in a barely audible voice. The single syllable smashed into Alex's chest like a wrecking ball. In the hush of that moment, he realized his child recognized him for who he truly was. "Yes, buddy," Alex whispered, his eyes stinging with tears. "I'm here." Catherine observed this from her chair, exhaustion carving lines into her features. She placed a hand on Alex's forearm, a gesture of shared worry and gratitude. They exchanged no words, but it was enough. For hours, they stayed like that, occasionally stepping out to update nurses or grab water from the vending machine, always returning to watch over Benjamin. Sometime near dawn, Alex felt his phone buzz. Marcus was calling, likely with an urgent update from London. Torn, Alex glanced at the sleeping child, then at Catherine, who nodded faintly, indicating she'd be fine for a moment. He slipped into the hallway, answering the call in hushed tones. Marcus's voice sounded frazzled. "Renault is threatening to back out if you're not here in person by the end of the week." "Tell him I can't travel right now," Alex muttered, leaning against a sterile white wall. "My son is in the hospital. We'll find a solution." Marcus hesitated. "Alex, if you don't come, the entire merger might collapse." Alex closed his eyes. At any other point in his life, he would have dropped everything and flown to London. But now, the notion of leaving Benjamin felt unimaginable. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I can't abandon him. If the deal hinges on me showing up, then do what you can. I trust you." Marcus sighed. "I'll try to negotiate more time. Take care of your son." Ending the call, Alex returned to Benjamin's bedside. The little boy stirred, letting out a feeble cough. Catherine gently held a cup of ice chips to his lips. He swallowed with difficulty, then settled back. Alex took his seat again, feeling the weight of conflicting demands crushing him. Just days ago, he was the unstoppable CEO. Now, he was just a worried father, terrified of losing something infinitely more important than any business venture. Morning light seeped through the narrow hospital window, illuminating the worry etched on Catherine's face. She looked at Alex, voice trembling. "Thank you for staying." "I wouldn't be anywhere else," he said, meaning every word. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. In that shared grip, he felt something shift, a silent acknowledgement that, despite all the mistakes and mistrust, they were in this together. A nurse entered, adjusting the IV drip. Benjamin let out a small whimper but remained asleep. Alex brushed a hand over his son's hair, heart clenching at how vulnerable he looked. He braced himself for whatever came next, resolute that no merger or corporate crisis would tear him from this hospital room. Because in this moment, fatherhood was not just a role, it was his entire world. 2 days after Benjamin was discharged from the hospital, Alexander Morgan found himself at a crossroads. It was late afternoon, and he stood in the penthouse nursery, gently arranging plush toys on the boys' beds. Outside, the sky glowed with the crisp light of approaching evening. Normally, this hour would find him glued to a conference call or reviewing contract documents, but so much had changed in such a short time. His phone vibrated on the dresser. Another message from Marcus. Guillaume is threatening to pull out if you don't show up in London. I'm losing ground here. He's raising the stakes. Alex's eyes flicked from the screen to the cheerful bedding he'd chosen for each child. Yellow dinosaurs for Justin, space rockets for Nicholas, and a calming ocean motif for Benjamin. He felt the pull of responsibility to his company, yet the memory of Benjamin's pale face in the hospital was fresh in his mind. Leaving the city, even for a short trip, seemed impossible. He understood what it meant to vow he'd always be there for his sons. Could he keep that promise if he jetted off to secure the merger? In the living room, Catherine scrolled through a work email on her phone. She was there to see how Benjamin was settling after his hospital stay, ensuring the penthouse environment was comfortable enough for the boys to spend the night. She glanced up, noticing his conflicted expression. Another business emergency. He nodded, forcing a small, weary laugh. The European CEO insists I come in person. He's testing my commitment, I guess. He hesitated. Marcus is doing his best, but it's not looking good. Catherine crossed her arms, leaning against the back of the sofa. What are you going to do? Alex let out a slow breath. Honestly, I'm thinking about staying right here. I delegated to Marcus because I trust him, and I want to show the board I can be a father without letting the business collapse. But if we lose the deal... He trailed off, gazing at the bright city skyline framed by the penthouse windows. Silence settled between them for a moment, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioner. Catherine finally spoke. Alex, I'm not going to tell you how to run your company, but the kids have seen you choose them once. If you suddenly vanish for a week or more, especially right after Benjamin got out of the hospital, that sends a confusing message. He closed his eyes, frustration building. Why can't it be simpler? What if we lose the merger? That's hundreds of jobs, expansions we've worked for years to secure. Her voice softened. There's always another deal. But these years with the boys, they'll never come back once they're gone. He turned to face her, memories of the hospital vigil flickering through his mind. Benjamin's small hand gripping his as he fought to breathe, the moment his son called him Dad. The surge of love and fear had made business concerns seem trivial, though he knew they weren't. This is the impossible choice, he thought grimly. My old life, or the new one. Just then, footsteps clattered in the hallway. Nicholas, Justin, and Benjamin burst into the living room, excitedly announcing that they'd won some silly competition between themselves. Benjamin still looked a bit peaked, but his energy was returning. The sight lifted Alex's spirits, even as it deepened his conflict. Catherine offered a faint smile. They're feeling better, at least. He nodded, kneeling to greet them. Hey, guys! Ready to pick out a movie for tonight? The three boys clamored excitedly, each voicing a different choice. In the midst of their chatter, Alex's phone buzzed again. Urgent. Vernon is calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow. He wants them to vote on halting the merger unless you comply. Alex felt his stomach twist. He pocketed the phone, determined not to let the children sense his anxiety. Let's go see what we have, he said, ushering them toward the penthouse's media room. Catherine followed, her expression worried. The next morning, the emergency board meeting took place in Horizon's sleek conference room. Vernon Blackwood wasted no time condemning Alex's dereliction of duty, claiming the stock price would plummet if Alex refused to meet Guillaume in person. Tension crackled in the air, the other board members exchanging uncomfortable glances. Marcus appeared via video call from London, dark circles under his eyes. The negotiations are on life support, Alex. Guillaume wants final sign-off from you face to face. I've done all I can. His voice wavered, revealing his own stress. Alex pressed his lips into a thin line. I'm not flying out this week, he said, prompting an audible gasp from Vernon. I've entrusted Marcus with the negotiations. If Guillaume needs proof I'm invested, he can schedule a video session with me any time. Otherwise, we walk. Vernon shot to his feet. You're making a grave mistake. This is not just about you. It's about the livelihoods of thousands. Alex felt a spear of guilt. He was risking the company's future, but he also knew risking his newly forged bond with his children was unacceptable. I hear you, Vernon, he said quietly. But I stand by my decision. A heavy silence followed. Finally, the board voted to continue with the deal, barely. A few members abstained, effectively placing the burden on Marcus to salvage negotiations. After the meeting, Alex retreated to his office, his mind churning. This was the test. If the deal imploded, he'd face severe backlash. But if it somehow succeeded, he'd prove to the world and himself that he could be both a leader and a father. As he stared at his reflection in the window, he recalled Catherine's words, "There's always another deal." She was right that moments with the children were irreplaceable. Still, he couldn't deny the knot of fear in his gut. He was gambling not just his own reputation, but the stability of those who depended on Horizon's success. That afternoon, he left work earlier than usual and picked up the boys from preschool. They chatted excitedly about snack time, circle time, and a show and tell coming up. Alex listened, feeling his tension ease with every mile, because while the company might be at risk, he was certain of one thing. Even if he lost the merger, he couldn't bear to lose these children's trust. And in that certainty, he found the courage to face whatever came next. The following week, a subdued hush enveloped Horizon Technologies. Rumors swirled that Guillaume Renault was mere hours away from terminating the merger unless Alexander Morgan appeared in person. Stock analysts stoked the flames of speculation, driving share prices down in a slow, nerve-wracking slide. Employees walked on eggshells, aware that the future of their livelihoods might hinge on these precarious negotiations. Amid this tension, Alex took an unprecedented step. He delegated. Not just the merger, but countless day-to-day tasks he'd always insisted on overseeing. He promoted senior managers into roles with real authority and trust, refusing to micromanage. And in a move that stunned even his closest allies, he authorized Marcus to finalize any arrangement he deemed fair. "I believe in you," Alex had told him over a crackling transatlantic call. "Do what you must." Some at Horizon whispered that Alex had lost his edge. Others, however, found themselves newly motivated by the responsibility he'd handed them. Productivity soared in unexpected corners of the company as teams no longer waited for his sign-off on every detail. Meanwhile, Alex focused on redefining what leadership meant for both Horizon Technologies and himself. Outside the corporate walls, his home life was also under reconstruction. The penthouse, once a pristine monument to bachelorhood, now bore evidence of children's presence. Scattered crayons on the coffee table, stray toy cars beneath furniture, small handprints smudged on the once flawless windows. Alex hired a professional to child-proof the corners, reconfigure the balcony, and ensure the place felt welcoming. He even allowed the boys to pick out posters for their bedroom walls, ending up with a hodgepodge of rocket ships, dinosaurs, and cartoon characters. Catherine watched these transformations with guarded astonishment. They weren't living together, but the synergy between their homes grew. She noticed how Alex started scheduling everything, from board calls to investor lunches, around the triplets' nap times and school pickups. When a reporter from a major financial magazine requested an exclusive, Alex declined, choosing instead to accompany Benjamin to a pediatric follow-up. The old Alex would have jumped at the chance to headline a big interview. The new Alex had different priorities. One evening, Catherine arrived at the penthouse to find Alex in the kitchen, attempting to cook spaghetti. The boys darted around, half playing, half offering help. Smoke curled from a pot on the stove. She stifled a laugh at the sight of this billionaire, a wooden spoon in one hand and a confused expression on his face. "You know, you could hire a chef," she teased, stepping in to lower the flame. "It might be safer." Alex grinned sheepishly. "Where's the fun in that?" He eyed the pot warily. "Okay, maybe a little help wouldn't hurt." They worked together, stirring sauce and boiling noodles. Justin squealed when a bubble of sauce popped near his hand, and Catherine shooed the boys into the living room, promising dinner would be ready soon. Alex, wiping sweat off his forehead with a dish towel, cast Catherine a grateful glance. For a moment, as they moved in tandem, it felt almost like the life they might have had if he hadn't chosen business all those years ago. Later, as they sat around the table, Nicholas insisting on sprinkling his own Parmesan cheese, Justin slurping noodles noisily, Benjamin quietly munching, Catherine couldn't help but notice the sense of warmth. She remembered the days when she'd be alone, juggling 3 high chairs, with no one to talk to but crying infants. Now, there was laughter, conversation, even the occasional sibling squabble that Alex awkwardly tried to referee. After the meal, Catherine began clearing plates. Alex motioned for her to stop. "I've got it," he said, shooing her away. She relented, watching from the kitchen archway as he washed dishes, whistling softly. There was a new lightness in his demeanor, less of the perpetual tension around his eyes. They settled the boys in front of a short cartoon, letting their food digest. Catherine lingered near the counter, arms crossed. "What you're doing at Horizon? It's bold." "I've heard rumors the stock is dropping." Alex dried his hands on a towel. "Short term, yes, the board is worried. But if the merger does collapse, we'll pivot to other expansions. I'm not going to force a deal on terms that put us at a disadvantage." She nodded, seeming to weigh her next words. "You've changed." He looked at her, genuinely interested, for better or for worse. A tentative smile curved her lips. "Time will tell. But the father I'm seeing is someone I never thought you could be." Alex felt relief and longing in equal measure. He wanted to say something meaningful, but the clang of Justin knocking over a cup in the living room broke the moment. Catherine sighed, moving to clean it up. Alex joined her, kneeling to wipe the spill. For a few seconds, they were side by side, hands busy, tension replaced by the simple reality of parenthood. When bedtime came, the boys scrambled into their pajamas, each wanting to show off a different bedtime story. They ended up reading 2, one about pirates, the other about animals on a farm. Halfway through, Nicholas asked pointedly, "Are you going away soon?" Alex glanced at Catherine, who remained quiet. He ruffled Nicholas's hair gently. "I'm not planning to." "Why do you ask?" Nicholas shrugged. "Rebecca said grown-ups sometimes leave if they have big jobs. She said maybe you will too." A flash of annoyance stirred in Alex, but he kept his tone steady. "I'm staying right here for now. If I ever do go on a trip, I promise I'll come back." Nicholas studied him carefully, then nodded, snuggling closer to Alex. That small gesture, the simple act of trust, felt more rewarding than any business triumph Alex had ever experienced. As he closed the storybook, a sense of purpose coursed through him. He might face chaos at Horizon tomorrow, but tonight, in this moment, he'd claimed a piece of the fatherhood he once believed was out of reach. Despite the slow but steady progress at home, the question of Alex's true identity in the boys' lives lingered, unaddressed. He was Mr. Morgan, a friend who loved them, showed up daily, and guided them through bedtime stories, but not officially called Dad. Catherine had suggested they wait until the children showed readiness. Now, the moment had arrived. One Friday afternoon, Alex and Catherine brought the triplets to a family therapist's office, a warm, inviting space with cozy chairs and shelves stacked with children's books. The kids sprawled on a circular rug, building towers with giant foam blocks, while Dr. Wilson, a middle-aged woman with a gentle demeanor, observed. Dr. Wilson initiated the conversation in a soft voice. "So, boys, I hear Mr. Morgan has been spending a lot of time with you. How do you feel about that?" Justin paused mid-block, shooting Alex a wide grin. "He's fun. He plays chase and builds forts." Benjamin nodded but stayed quiet, fidgeting with the edge of a foam block. Nicholas pursed his lips, fixing the therapist with a serious look. "He's nice, but sometimes he looks sad." Dr. Wilson raised her eyebrows gently. "Why do you think he looks sad?" Nicholas shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe he wants to live with us and can't." A raw ache pulled at Alex's chest. Catherine reached out, touching Nicholas's shoulder. "He's with us as much as he can be, right?" Her voice trembled slightly. Dr. Wilson guided the discussion toward the topic of family. She explained to the boys that families aren't always just moms or dads. Some have aunts, uncles, grandparents. But sometimes there's a special person who's not just a friend, someone who's part of the family in a very important way. The boys listened, wide-eyed. Finally, Dr. Wilson looked at Alex. "Alexander, do you want to share anything with the boys about who you are to them?" He cleared his throat, heart pounding. "Yes, I do." He shifted to kneel on the rug, so he was at eye level. Justin crawled closer, resting a small hand on Alex's knee, as if sensing a big announcement. Nicholas and Benjamin leaned in. Catherine stayed off to the side, arms folded, her gaze never leaving the children. Alex inhaled. "Remember how I've been learning all about your favorite things, like dinosaurs, space, art, and how I said I'd always be there for you?" They nodded, expressions serious. "Well, there's a reason I care about you so much. I'm actually your father." Justin blinked, tilting his head. "Father?" Nicholas's eyes widened. "What's that mean?" Before Alex could answer, Catherine joined them. She placed a hand on each boy's shoulder. "It means Mr. Morgan is your dad, the person who helped bring you into the world, the one who's supposed to take care of you and love you, just like Mommy does. But remember how I said he didn't know about you when you were little?" Benjamin, who had been quiet, murmured, "He knows now." He glanced at Alex, brows knitting together. "Are you going to stay?" Alex's voice cracked. "Yes, Benjamin. I'm going to stay. I'm not leaving you, not again." A hush fell over the small room as the boys seemed to digest this revelation. Suddenly, Justin broke the silence by flinging himself into Alex's arms. "Dad!" he exclaimed, voice shrill with excitement, as if testing the word out loud. "Dad! Dad! Dad!" Nicholas clung to Catherine, looking uncertain. Benjamin slid closer to Alex, pressing his cheek against Alex's shoulder. The swirl of emotions, confusion, relief, excitement played across their small faces. Alex felt tears burning his eyes, though he fought to keep his composure. He'd dreamed about this moment, dreaded it too, worried they'd reject him for missing 4 years of their lives. But here they were, calling him Dad, with an innocence that shattered his long-held fears. Dr. Wilson softly commended the boys for sharing their feelings, reassuring them it was normal to have questions. Nicholas, the most analytical, asked, "Why didn't you come before?" Alex stumbled over his words, offering the most honest explanation he could without overwhelming them. "I didn't know about you. I was working far away, but I regret that very much. I wish I could go back in time and be there for every minute." Nicholas seemed to accept that, though his expression remained pensive. "Doctor," Wilson helped guide the conversation, reminding everyone that building a father-child relationship after so long would take time and understanding. The boys nodded, though Justin seemed ready to invite Alex to move in permanently and host nightly pillow fights. When the session ended, the therapist gave them homework, practical exercises to foster open communication. Alex left the office with a mixture of euphoria and trepidation swirling in his chest. The boys now knew the truth, but that was only the beginning of this new chapter. Outside, Catherine walked with him to the parking lot while the triplets ran ahead, racing to the car. She let out a shaky breath. "They took it better than I expected." He reached for her hand on a whim, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Thank you for trusting me today." She nodded, eyes glistening, though she quickly withdrew her hand and crossed her arms. "I did this for them," she said, voice catching. "They deserve to know their dad, and I'm starting to see how much you really want to be that person." Before he could reply, the boys shouted for them to hurry up. They parted ways with a lingering, unspoken understanding. The weight of secrecy was lifted, replaced by the responsibility of truth. As Alex climbed into his own car, he gazed at the small figures piling into Catherine's SUV. Dad, Justin had called him. The word echoed in his mind, a beacon guiding him toward the family he once nearly lost forever. The buzz of chatter rose high in the grand ballroom of the Boston Children's Aid Gala, an annual charity event Alex typically hosted with cool professionalism. This year, everything felt different. He arrived not alone, but accompanied by Catherine and the boys, though the triplets stayed only for a short meet and greet before heading home with Catherine's sister for bedtime. Just the sight of Alex kneeling beside the three identical boys for a quick photo caught the attention of Boston's elite. "What a lovely family," murmured an older philanthropist, adjusting her diamond earrings. She greeted Alex with curiosity, noticing the significant shift in his usual aloof demeanor. As the boys scampered off, Catherine smoothed her elegant blue gown and looked around, a touch wary. This was a world she knew only from the sidelines: glamorous crowds, reporters snapping photos, and the city's wealthiest individuals exchanging pleasantries. Alex offered her his arm. "Stay close," he whispered with a reassuring grin. They made their way through the gala, people parting to greet Alex, some praising his philanthropic contributions, others whispering about his sudden emergence as a family man. He introduced Catherine modestly as the genius interior designer behind several major projects in Boston, eliciting impressed nods. She carried herself with quiet dignity, gracious but slightly guarded. Near the stage, Vernon Blackwood lurked, a stiff smile plastered on his face. He confronted Alex when Catherine excused herself to speak with a friend. Well, showing up with the whole brood now, are we?" Vernon's tone was dripping with condescension. "Quite a shift from the Alexander Morgan we used to know." Alex stiffened but refused to rise to the bait. "Times change, Vernon." "Indeed they do," Vernon replied, stepping closer, lowering his voice. "Still no word from Marcus. The deadline's nearly upon us, and there's talk Guillaume Renault might walk. Are you prepared for the fallout?" The old Alex would have masked his nerves with a sharp retort. The new Alex simply gave a measured shrug. "If the deal collapses, it collapses. We'll adapt." Vernon shook his head in disbelief. "I've never seen someone so ready to throw away a billion-dollar merger for personal matters." Alex stiffened. "It's not just personal, it's principle. Guillaume wants us over a barrel. That's not a merger, it's a buyout." I won't sacrifice Horizon's integrity, nor the time I'm putting into my family, to appease him." Without waiting for Vernon's response, Alex stepped away, searching the crowd for Catherine. He found her chatting with Louise Matthews, the beloved mentor who had guided her in college. Louise spotted him first, offering a kind smile. "Alexander, it's good to see you in this context, and not just in a boardroom magazine spread." He chuckled softly. "I'm glad to be here with something worth celebrating." He turned to Catherine. "Ready for that speech?" She nodded, exhaling nervously. This year, Alex had invited Catherine to deliver a short talk about her design work in collaboration with several local charities. Soon, she took the stage, the audience falling silent as she explained how thoughtful design could transform community spaces for underserved families. In a measured tone, she highlighted real stories of how aesthetics and functionality help people feel dignity and comfort. Her voice carried passion, and the crowd listened intently. Alex stood at the edge of the stage, chest swelling with pride. When she finished, applause thundered through the room. She stepped down, cheeks flushed, and Alex immediately offered a congratulatory hug. For a moment, they were swept into the swirl of well-wishers. Rebecca hovered in the background, arms folded, eyeing Alex warily but with less hostility than before. Even Daniel Park was there, quietly acknowledging Alex with a nod before whispering his congratulations to Catherine. The highlight of the evening arrived when the MC summoned Alex to make a final announcement about the Morgan Family Foundation, a new initiative supporting single parents in need of affordable housing and childcare. He'd established it quietly over the past months, inspired by Catherine's story. When he revealed the foundation's name, a ripple of curiosity spread through the ballroom. This was the first time Alex publicly embraced fatherhood, letting the world see him as more than just a solitary titan of industry. "None of this would be possible," he concluded, voice resonating, "without the example set by people who've proven that family, however formed, is worth every sacrifice. My hope is that by supporting single parents, we can provide the resources they need to thrive, just as my family has taught me what it means to truly live." He stepped off the stage to warm applause. Catherine caught his eye, a quiet wonder in her expression. "Morgan Family Foundation," she murmured. "That's quite a statement." Alex managed a wry smile. "It's only a start, but it's one way to honor how you raised the boys on your own. You showed me that love and determination can build more than any corporation." Her eyes misted over, but she blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in such a public setting. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you," and intertwined her hand with his for just a moment. It wasn't a declaration of rekindled romance, but it was something, an acknowledgement of the bridge they were slowly rebuilding. As the gala wound down, the gentle hum of chatter eased into the background. Alex felt a calm he'd never experienced at events like this before. He wasn't merely presenting a polished image to donors or investors. He was standing among them, integrated and whole, no longer fractured between his empire and the family he once abandoned. That realization filled him with a hope as expansive as the city skyline glittering beyond the ballroom's grand windows. 6 months passed in a steady rhythm that neither Alex nor Catherine could have predicted. Little by little, the corporate world and the family world interwove, forging a life with more complexity and depth than Alex had ever known. As springtime buds began to bloom across Boston's parks, Alex found himself at a place he never anticipated, an elementary school open house for the boys' upcoming kindergarten enrollment. He hovered by a bulletin board covered in colorful handprints, each one labeled with a child's name. Nearby, parents milled about, some making small talk, others anxiously comparing notes about the next school year. For Alex, the environment was new, exhilarating, and slightly overwhelming. Gone were the gilded conference halls and private lounges of the business elite. Instead, he navigated halls lined with cartoon posters and cubbies stuffed with children's artwork. Catherine arrived a few minutes later, greeting him with a quick nod. They still maintained separate residences. He in his penthouse, she in her townhouse, but they coordinated schedules so effectively it almost felt seamless. "Did you register them yet?" she asked, scanning the forms in her hand. He shook his head. "I thought we should do it together." Then, lowering his voice with a hint of pride, he added, "Thanks for letting me be part of this." She offered a small smile in return, the warmth in her brown eyes unmistakable. "You're their dad. You deserve to be here." They walked together, meeting the kindergarten teachers, peeking into classrooms where bright rugs and tiny chairs promised new adventures for the triplets. Nicholas, ever meticulous, peppered a teacher with questions about reading time. Justin eyed the monkey bars outside through a window, practically vibrating with excitement. Benjamin clung close to Alex, occasionally pointing out something interesting, like a mural of sea creatures on a hallway wall. After the open house, they convened with a few parents for a small get-together in the school's play area. The triplets blended in quickly, forging instant friendships over a game of tag. Alex watched, arms folded, a contented smile curving his lips. Catherine joined him by a bench, sighing in contentment. "Hard to believe, they'll be 5 soon," she murmured. "Time goes so fast." "I know," Alex replied, memories of discovering their existence flashing through his mind, an event that now felt like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. Soon, they wrapped up and headed out. In the parking lot, Alex buckled Justin into his booster seat, while Nicholas demanded a toy from the back seat. Benjamin tugged gently on Alex's sleeve. "Dad, can we come over tonight to your place?" "We want to see the new bunk beds." Alex felt a surge of joy at the casual use of Dad. It never got old. "Of course," he said, catching Catherine's eye for confirmation. She nodded, though a faint shadow crossed her face. He eased into the driver's seat. Catherine slid into the passenger seat, having agreed to ride with him while the kids clambered around in the back. Once on the road, her pensive expression caught his attention. "You okay?" he asked softly, keeping an ear out for the children's chatter behind them. She took a moment to answer. "I'm fine, just thinking about the future. The boys are getting older. They'll have school, homework, friends. We'll need to work out a schedule for drop-offs and pickups." He smiled, feeling oddly excited about the mundane logistics of co-parenting. "We can handle it. My schedule at Horizon is more flexible now. I'd like to do some morning drop-offs if you're okay with that." She glanced at him, a hint of gratitude in her eyes. "I'd like that." They reached the penthouse, and the boys practically leapt from the car, racing to the elevator. Once upstairs, Alex let them bolt down the hall to their newly renovated bedroom. The bunk beds, a bright addition featuring space-themed sheets, were the boys' latest fascination. Their delighted shrieks echoed through the corridor. As Catherine and Alex stepped inside, they watched the triplets jump and laugh on the lower bunk. Alex turned to Catherine, a question lingering on his tongue. "You ever imagine a scenario where we might, combine households?" She paused, taking in the tidy living space that had been reimagined with children in mind. "I did, once upon a time. Now..." She looked conflicted. "We're finding our rhythm, and I don't want to rush anything. The boys need stability, and I need to trust that this version of you is here to stay." He nodded, respect lighting his eyes. "I understand, and I'm not pushing. I just want you to know, I'm open to it someday, if you are." He offered a quiet smile, leaving the door metaphorically ajar without pressuring her. They settled into the living area, the children soon dragging them into an impromptu game of astronauts and aliens. Justin declared Alex the captain, while Benjamin insisted Catherine be their mission control. Nicholas took notes with a serious expression, scribbling alien encounters in a mini notebook. The chaos of laughter and imagination filled the penthouse like a warm summer breeze. Later, as dinner time approached, Alex pulled out pots and pans, still determined to master cooking basics. Catherine joined him, silently and naturally slipping into an easy partnership, passing him ingredients, stirring a sauce, guiding him on timing. The triplets colored quietly at the table, occasionally hollering for help with crayons. The entire scene radiated an ordinary, comforting energy that felt far more valuable than any exclusive corporate function Alex had ever attended. He thought about calling Marcus, who was still in intense final negotiations overseas, to share the day's events, but he decided he could wait until after dinner. Right now, the sizzling of food, the chatter of children, and the presence of Catherine at his side mattered most. "A new foundation," he murmured under his breath, recalling how everything was building anew, from the walls of Horizon Technologies to the heart of his own home. And for the first time in his life, Alex genuinely believed that a legacy defined by people, by love and shared memories, would be the greatest achievement he could ever claim. He wasn't certain if Catherine would eventually merge her life fully with his, but he no longer needed an immediate answer. The simple act of laying this foundation, brick by brick, day by day, filled him with more hope than any corporate triumph ever had. A crisp spring wind ruffled Alexander Morgan's hair as he waited outside the boys' preschool one bright afternoon. They would soon finish their final weeks there before moving on to kindergarten, a milestone that left Alex marveling at how swiftly time had passed. He glanced around at the throng of parents arriving for pickup, mums and dads in all shapes and forms, some rushing from work in suits, others juggling babies in carriers. He fit right in with them now, a change he never would have imagined a year ago. The school doors swung open, and out tumbled the triplets, Nicholas calm and observant, Justin bursting with excited energy, and Benjamin lingering behind, carefully holding a folded piece of construction paper. "Dad!" Justin called, sprinting over with a grin so wide it nearly split his face. Alex crouched to meet him, ruffling the boy's hair. A pang of pride shot through him at that single word, "Dad." Nicholas offered a nod, while Benjamin held up his folded paper, shyly announcing he'd drawn a picture of all 5 of them at the beach. "Looks amazing," Alex said, touched by the depiction of them building sandcastles. "We should go once it's warmer, maybe a family trip." He directed the last part to Catherine, who approached with a smile. She'd volunteered that afternoon, helping the children paint flower pots as a Mother's Day project. Her cheeks were flushed from managing the chaos of dozens of 4-year-olds and gallons of paint. On their walk back, the children bombarded Alex with tales of their day. Justin was especially thrilled about a new friend named Miguel, who had invited him to a birthday party. Alex nodded enthusiastically. "Sounds fun. We can all go, if your mum says yes." Catherine glanced at him appreciatively. She was gradually loosening the reins, letting him handle more of the logistical side of parenting. Their lively chatter drifted toward the subject of summer plans. "The school has a short break before kindergarten starts," Catherine said. "I was thinking maybe a road trip to Cape Cod or up to Maine. We could rent a place for a week." Alex's face lit up. Though they weren't officially living together, he cherished any chance to weave their lives more tightly. "I'd love to help plan it," he offered. "We can find a cozy cottage, maybe near a beach or a lake for the kids." Nicholas overheard, eyes gleaming. "We can see real lighthouses, right? And boats." "That's the idea," Catherine said, her tone warm yet cautious. She was learning how to let Alex step in without fear that he'd vanish if business called. When they reached Catherine's townhouse, the boys hurried inside to grab snacks. calling over their shoulders about rocket games they wanted to play later. Alex lingered at the door, noticing a faint flicker in Catherine's expression. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. She sighed, leaning against the porch rail. "I've been offered a short-term project in Chicago again. They loved my designs for the expo last year and want me on a 6-month contract. It's a big deal, Alex. Could lead to a permanent position if I wanted it." Her voice wavered on that last phrase. He blinked. They'd been through this possibility once, but the timing then had been all wrong. Now they were in a new place, forging a united front for the boys. Still, the possibility of distance tore at him. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Catherine tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm not sure. The boys are finally stable with you in the picture, but this is my career too. I don't want to keep turning down opportunities." Alex nodded, a knot forming in his chest. "We'll figure it out. Maybe we can work out a schedule. I can fly out occasionally, or you can come back. We'll do what's best for everyone." Catherine studied him, searching for any sign of the old Alex, the one who'd balk at compromise. When she found none, she allowed a small smile. "I appreciate that. Let's talk more after the kids are in bed." That evening, Alex returned to his penthouse, mind spinning with possibilities. He wondered if he should just ask her to move in, to unify their homes. But he knew she valued her independence. It was what sustained her through 4 years of single motherhood. If they were to share a life, it had to be a choice freely made, not forced by circumstances or fear of separation. The next day, he threw himself into finalizing the restructured leadership at Horizon Technologies. Marcus continued to juggle negotiations from London, sending sporadic updates. A major shift had taken place in how Horizon operated. Teams reported progress without waiting for Alex's approval at every turn, and morale was surprisingly high. With delegated authority, employees felt ownership in the outcome. Despite the slow-boiling tension with the European merger, the company itself was thriving in new ways. In between calls, Alex arranged to meet with Catherine after the triplets went to sleep. He swung by her place, a late dinner tucked under his arm, Thai takeout, their mutual favorite. They settled at her dining table, the house peaceful now that the children were in dreamland. Over pad thai and spring rolls, they gently navigated the question of Chicago. Would it mean a long-distance relationship for 6 months? Could the boys handle split custody across state lines? Catherine lifted her shoulders in a small shrug. "I want to grow my business, but not at the cost of fracturing what we've built here. For once, I'd like to see if we can make decisions as a team." Alex reached across the table, lightly touching her hand. "That's all I've wanted. You never have to shoulder this alone again. Let's keep exploring our options. If Chicago is right for you, we'll find a way to make it work." Her gaze held a soft gratitude. "Thank you." They continued talking late into the night, weighing pros and cons. By the time Alex left, no firm decision had been made, but an unexpected hope filled the space between them. Because this was new territory, discussing life plans as co-parents, perhaps even more, the old Alex would have demanded a solution that fit his schedule. This new Alex wanted a solution that fit all 5 of them. On the drive home, he thought about the road trip the boys were so excited for, the messy but joyful life they shared, and the fragile dream of a family that might finally come together on equal terms. Though the path was uncharted, he felt ready to navigate it, because if fatherhood had taught him anything, it was that love, like business, required bold steps into unfamiliar territory, and that the reward was worth every risk. A stifling July heatwave settled over Boston like a heavy blanket. Air conditioners hummed in every window, and the city seemed to waver under the relentless sun. Alexander Morgan felt the warmth acutely as he stepped out of an afternoon board meeting, his tie already loosened. He still led Horizon Technologies, but his role had transformed. Delegation was now the norm, and the push and pull over the European merger had finally come to a head. Guillaume Renault had called for a final ultimatum. Marcus, who had returned from London, cornered Alex in the corridor. Guillaume set a hard deadline for the contract. He wants an answer tomorrow, no more extensions. Alex let out a slow breath. Fine, we'll meet, but I'm not compromising on the terms we agreed upon in principle. If he wants to salvage this, let's do it. Otherwise, we walk. Understood, Marcus said, though he looked uneasy. He ran a hand through his hair, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Listen, Alex, I hate to bring this up, but Vernon's been stirring the pot. He claims you've lost sight of the company's goals, says if you can't close this deal, you should resign as CEO. A coil of anger tensed in Alex's gut. He'd expected Vernon's hostility, but the suggestion he stepped down felt more personal than ever. Let him talk, Alex muttered, voice tight. We have a board vote next quarter anyway. By then, they'll see that Horizon can thrive without bowing to Renault's demands. Marcus nodded, though his eyes flickered with doubt. All right. I'll schedule a final call with Renault for tomorrow morning. Leaving the office, Alex's head buzzed with the knowledge that everything he'd worked for was on the line. If the merger collapsed, Horizon would survive, but perhaps not without a major shake-up. And if he continued to prioritize fatherhood, there was a real possibility he could lose his leadership role. The stakes had never been higher. When he arrived at Catherine's townhouse that evening, the boys practically tackled him with excitement. We got the postcards from Grandma Elena, Justin yelled, waving a colorful card featuring a Hawaiian sunset. Elena had gone on a once-in-a-lifetime cruise, blissfully unaware of the corporate drama swirling around her son. Alex forced a smile, tucking the postcard into his jacket pocket. Catherine stood in the kitchen, washing produce at the sink. They can't wait for dinner. I promised them pizza tonight, she said, but her eyes lingered on Alex's face, noting the tension. She wiped her hands and stepped closer, lowering her voice so the children wouldn't overhear. Bad day. He let out a breath, leaning against the counter. Big decisions tomorrow. Could change everything. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You'll figure it out. But maybe you should talk to them, Alex. They're old enough to sense something's going on. Nicholas said you looked worried. He rubbed his temples. I don't want to burden them with adult problems. Catherine's expression softened. They don't need details. Just let them know you're okay. They've had enough upheaval in their short lives. If they see you upset, they might think it's their fault. He grimaced at the thought. You're right. He resolved to be present for the kids tonight, no matter what turmoil brewed at Horizon. With a quick nod, he stepped into the living room, where the boys were arguing over which cartoon to watch. Pulling them close, he joked about a monkey that had escaped from the zoo in a story Justin made up. Soon, laughter replaced their bickering, and Alex felt a measure of calm wash over him. Yet the reprieve lasted only until the doorbell rang. Unexpected. Catherine frowned, drying her hands as she moved to answer. A moment later, Rebecca strode in, face tight with concern. Kate, I need to talk to you privately, she said, shooting Alex a pointed look. Catherine glanced at him questioningly, then led Rebecca to the dining room. While the boys wrestled on the rug, Alex inched closer to the closed door, picking up fragments of conversation. Something about finances, a lease, heartbreak. A few minutes later, Catherine emerged, face pale. Rebecca trailed behind, her normally stern features set in exhaustion. Seeing Alex's questioning gaze, Catherine sighed. Rebecca's finances took a hit. She co-signed a loan for a friend who defaulted, so now she's losing her condo. She might need a place to stay. Alex felt a mix of empathy and caution. Rebecca had never hidden her disdain for him. If she needs help, of course. We'll do what we can, he offered carefully. Rebecca bristled. I'm not asking for your charity, she snapped, then softened slightly at Catherine's warning glare. Look, I just need a few weeks until I can get back on my feet, maybe longer. She hesitated, crossing her arms. I know we've never seen eye to eye, Alex, but maybe Catherine's guest room could work. Catherine studied them both. I'd offer, but with the boys around, it's already a full house. She paused, eyes flicking to Alex. Unless we figure something else out. An uncomfortable silence stretched. Alex thought of the penthouse, plenty of space, child-proofed, but it would mean letting Rebecca into his personal domain. The same person who'd branded him irresponsible and unworthy. Yet, if they were truly mending family ties, perhaps this was part of it. I have a guest suite, Alex said carefully, locking eyes with Rebecca. If you want, you can stay there. The words felt foreign coming out of his mouth, but a small, determined part of him wanted to prove he could rise above old wounds for the family's sake. Rebecca looked startled, then suspicious. She swallowed, clearly torn. Fine, she said at last, voice clipped. But I pay my own way. Don't expect me to grovel. Catherine sighed in relief, stepping forward to hug her sister. It was a tentative show of unity, though Alex noted Rebecca's stiff posture. Still, it felt like a step in the right direction, albeit a complicated one. Because in the midst of corporate battles and co-parenting intricacies, old family grievances were now re-emerging. He had no idea how this living arrangement would play out. Late that night, after the kids were in bed and Rebecca had left to pack, Alex and Catherine stood on the porch, letting the summer air cool their worries. Catherine gave him an apologetic glance. I know this complicates everything. He managed a half smile. Family is messy, he said, recalling her words from long ago. We'll figure it out. Right now, I just want the boys to feel secure, and if it helps your sister too, then we'll make room. In the glow of the porch light, they shared a moment of silent gratitude, acknowledging that while old wounds were reopening, new healing might finally begin. As he headed home to prepare for tomorrow's final merger call, Alex reminded himself that love and family often came wrapped in chaos. He just hoped that in trying to do right by everyone, he wouldn't lose sight of his own equilibrium. A swirl of urgency crackled through Horizon Technologies' executive floor early the next morning. Alex arrived at dawn, took a steadying breath, and marched into the high-tech conference room. Marcus was already there, setting up the video link for their final negotiation session with Guillaume Renault. Across the table, Vernon Blackwood tapped his pen impatiently, his posture rigid with pent-up tension. At precisely 7 o'clock, Guillaume's face filled the wall-mounted screens. The European CEO wore a cool, expectant expression. "Mr. Morgan," he greeted, voice heavy with an accent. "I trust you have decided to meet my terms?" Alex maintained eye contact. "We've reviewed your demands," he said calmly. "We remain firm on our initial agreement. Horizon will not agree to additional concessions that compromise our intellectual property or employee stability. We're willing to finalize if you revert to the terms we settled on last month." Guillaume pursed his lips, exuding impatience. "Then we are at an impasse. I have other suitors ready to offer more favorable conditions." Marcus and Vernon exchanged tense looks. For a moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Alex recalled the paternal vow he'd made to the boys and the promise to Catherine that he wouldn't compromise his moral ground. Could he live with himself if he sacrificed his values just to push the deal through? "I'm sorry to hear that," Alex said finally, We appreciate your time, but if you can't honor the previous terms, we must withdraw." He motioned for Marcus to end the call. Guillaume's eyes flickered, a momentary flash of surprise. "You would walk away?" "Over a minor percentage point and some contract clauses." "Yes," Alex replied, voice unwavering, "because the way we operate is as important as the numbers." A pregnant silence. Then Guillaume let out a resigned sigh. "Let's not be hasty. Perhaps we should revisit the language on those clauses." He flipped through a folder on his side. "I can't promise full reversion, but I might be willing to negotiate." A ripple of relief spread across the table. Marcus quickly resumed the call, pulling up digital documents, highlighting shared ground. Alex suppressed a triumphant grin. Vernon, meanwhile, looked flabbergasted, yet grudgingly impressed. Over the next 2 hours, the team painstakingly hammered out revised clauses that he, while modestly tweaked, preserved the integrity Alex held dear. By the time they concluded, Guillaume offered a curt nod of acceptance. "We'll draft final paperwork by week's end." "Congratulations, Horizon." The screen went black, leaving the room in a stunned hush. Marcus broke the silence with a triumphant laugh. "I can't believe it. He blinked first." Alex exhaled, shoulders sagging with relief. "He realized we meant business," he said, a grin tugging at his lips. "Good work, everyone." Vernon eyed Alex warily. "I'll admit I doubted you, Morgan, but it seems your gamble paid off this time." Alex nodded, acknowledging the half-apology. "Horizon's stronger when we stand by our principles," he replied. "Let's finalize these documents and prepare a public statement." With that, the room emptied, leaving Alex and Marcus to share a moment of victory. "It's done," Marcus said, voice tinged with disbelief. "And you didn't have to sacrifice what mattered to you most." Alex's thoughts drifted to the 3 identical smiles awaiting him at home, and the quiet assurance that he could be a father without forfeiting his professional integrity. "Thanks to you, Marcus. I couldn't have done it alone." They shook hands, friends and partners whose paths had both shifted in the past year. Leaving the office, Alex dashed to the penthouse, ready to share the news with Catherine and the boys. But his newfound optimism took a blow when he opened the door to find Rebecca pacing anxiously in the living room. Bags and boxes were stacked against one wall, her expression a storm cloud. She shot him a withering look. "Are you sure this is okay?" He sighed, locking the door behind him. "I have plenty of room. As I said, you're welcome to stay until you get back on your feet." Rebecca eyed him for a moment. "You came through on your promise to help." "I won't pretend I like you, but thanks." She lowered her gaze, clearly wrestling with an internal battle. Alex dropped his briefcase on a side table. "Look, I know you think I'm the cause of all Catherine's past pain. You have every right to resent me." He kept his voice even. "But I'm different now, and I want to help this family. Our family, including you." Her posture stiffened. "We'll see. Just don't expect me to play happy house guest." Before he could respond, the penthouse door opened again. Catherine entered, ushering the boys in ahead of her. "Alex!" Justin squealed, running to hug him. "Mom said you have big news." Alex lifted Justin, a broad grin creasing his face. "We got the deal, buddy. I stood my ground and we got what we wanted." Justin didn't fully grasp the complexity, but he cheered anyway. Nicholas and Benjamin joined in, clapping and demanding details. Amid the excitement, Rebecca hovered to the side, clearly feeling out of place. Alex noticed her hesitation and offered a small wave, inviting her to join them. She nodded, but remained silent. Catherine walked over, her eyes warm. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. I know how hard it was for you to risk losing that merger. He pressed a light kiss to her temple, so naturally it felt like they'd been partners forever. I meant what I said, he murmured. The kids come first. That doesn't mean we can't have success, too. The evening that followed was a whirlwind of cheers and laughter. The boys insisted on pizza to celebrate Alex's victory, so they called for delivery and ate at the kitchen island. Even Rebecca relaxed slightly, sipping a soda and engaging in minor small talk with Catherine. And in that bustling penthouse, children squealing, pizza boxes piled high, the scent of melted cheese filling the air, Alex felt an overwhelming sense of redemption. He'd reconstructed more than just a business deal. He'd started to rebuild trust and belonging, forging a family that no longer required perfection, just commitment. In the back of his mind, he knew challenges lay ahead. Catherine's Chicago opportunity, Rebecca's guarded hostility, the looming board vote. But for now, they'd reached a moment of calm, a promise that all these separate threads could weave together in ways he once believed impossible. 1 year after that fateful evening at Lumiere, the Morgan family, all 5 of them, found themselves stepping through those same restaurant doors. The maître d' recognized Alex immediately, recalling the extraordinary scene that had once played out under these glittering chandeliers. But tonight, there was no single table in the corner for a solitary diner. Instead, a table for 5 was arranged near the sweeping windows that showcased the Boston skyline. Catherine led the triplets inside. They wore matching blazers, looking both dapper and slightly fidgety as they took in the elegance around them. She had on a graceful, dark teal dress, her hair swept back. Alex arrived last, momentarily pausing at the threshold. The memory of that night washed over him. Tears on the marble floor, his own heart cracking wide open at the sight of his sons for the very first time. How far we've come, he thought. The maître d' guided them to their table, where crisp linen and polished silver gleamed under soft candlelight. The triplets giggled, wide-eyed at the fancy decor. Justin poked at the folded napkin, Nicholas studied the silverware, and Benjamin peered out at the skyline, remarking on the twinkling lights in the distance. Once seated, Alex and Catherine exchanged a private smile. The tension and uncertainty that once defined them had eased into something gentler. They remained co-parents first and foremost, but over time, an undercurrent of affectionate possibility had taken root. They hadn't rushed back into romance, mindful of their complicated history, yet the closeness between them had grown undeniably deeper. They placed their orders, the boys clapping in excitement when they learned they could try a special kids' gourmet meal the chef had prepared for them. Alex lifted his glass of sparkling water for a toast. To us, 1 year of being a real family, whatever shape that takes. The boys raised their juice cups, following his lead. Catherine's eyes glimmered, touched by the simplicity of the moment. Around them, a few curious patrons glanced over, perhaps recalling the dramatic scene from the past. No one intruded, though. It was as if the entire restaurant wanted them to have this second chance at a proper beginning. Dinner passed in a swirl of laughter, gentle reprimands for stray elbows on the table, and Justin nearly toppling his breadbasket. Rebecca, who had temporarily moved into a new apartment closer to her job, was invited as well but had declined, claiming she didn't want to intrude on a special family night. Alex noted how far they'd come. Rebecca was still guarded, but no longer openly hostile. In her own way, she seemed to accept that Alex was part of this family's fabric now. Midway through the meal, Nicholas announced a new goal. "When I grow up, I want to make rockets for real, Dad." He beamed, then glanced at Catherine. "And you, Mom, can design the rocket interiors so people feel at home in space." Catherine chuckled, brushing her fingers through his hair. "Sounds ambitious." "We should start with finishing kindergarten, don't you think?" Justin smirked, claiming he'd explore underwater worlds instead, while Benjamin quietly mused about writing stories of alien planets. Alex soaked up every dream, his heart brimming with the amazement that these children, once strangers in his life, had become his greatest source of joy and pride. As dessert arrived, the maitre d' discreetly refilled Alex's glass. The city lights sparkled like a tapestry behind them. The memory of the old Alexander Morgan flashed in his mind, standing at this very spot, consumed by spreadsheets, ignorant of the life he'd cast aside. Now, he watched as Justin sampled a spoonful of chocolate mousse, eyes widening in delight, and he felt a profound contentment. Catherine leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "We did it," she said, referencing not just the dinner, but the entire journey. He nodded, expression tender. "We did," he echoed. The time came for them to leave. As the family rose from the table, a hush fell around them. Other diners, staff, everyone recalling the first time Alexander Morgan had left that corner seat in turmoil. Tonight, however, it was a triumphant departure. He settled the check, then guided the boys toward the exit, Catherine at his side, her hand lightly brushing his arm. Outside, a soft evening breeze danced through the city streets. They stepped onto the sidewalk, the triplets jostling to hold Alex's and Catherine's hands. The lights of Boston sparkled above, reflecting on the glass facades of nearby buildings. Benjamin paused, staring up at the illuminated sky. "Dad, are you happy?" he asked, a question simple and profound. Alex crouched to meet his gaze, feeling a wave of emotion swell inside him. He remembered the old emptiness, the ruthless drive that once blinded him to everything else. Now, as he looked into Benjamin's curious eyes, echoed by Justin and Nicholas peering close, he felt an overwhelming certainty. "Yes," he said, voice thick with gratitude. "For the first time in my life, I understand what happiness actually means." They continued down the sidewalk together, 5 silhouettes moving in harmony under the city's glow. The challenges of tomorrow might still loom, new business hurdles, co-parenting details, the question of whether he and Catherine might formally reunite. Yet for tonight, they strolled forward as a family, each step bringing them closer to a shared future, bound by the love that once seemed impossible. And in the quiet hush of that Boston evening, nothing could feel more right. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.